Akira Kisaragi traverses into the Bleach world, unlocking a check-in system. He initially thought that by checking in daily, he could become stronger, soon become the Captain Commander, join Division 0, punch Yhwach, kick the Soul King, and marry Unohana. However, the system's style wasn't quite what he had imagined. Check-in complete. Obtained Genryūsai Yamamoto's secret roasted sweet potato. Check-in complete. Obtained exclusive attribute. King of normal attacks effect. Check-in complete. Obtained Retsu Unohana's. Akira's eyes suddenly lit up. Seems like this might not be so bad after all. What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Omni-sensei here with What If I Was Reborn in Bleach as the Strongest Shinigami? Part 1. If you enjoy this type of content, please get Sugatensho the like button. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. Remember to check out the original story linked in the description. Without further ado, let's get into the legend of the strongest Shinigami. Lord Kisaragi, I can only accompany you this far. In front of the Shino Academy, a young woman dressed in a white kimono and scarlet hakama was bidding farewell to a reluctant young man. From here on, you'll have to walk your own path. The young woman's smile was radiant, seemingly looking forward to the days ahead. Well, Nanao, those words are quite heartless. The young man scoffed. After all, I am your head priest. Yes, head priest. Nanao Ise coaxed gently. During your time at the academy, please, pretty please, don't cause any trouble. There are many students from upper-class noble families, even from the 5 great noble houses. If you were to offend them, given our status, we might quickly find ourselves on the execution grounds. For once, the young man didn't contradict the young woman. Instead, he nodded lightly and replied with a smile. I understand, Nanao. This reaction momentarily stunned her, but she soon smiled, waved goodbye, and left the vicinity of the academy. Today was entrance day for Shino Academy, and many young men like him were present, including some dressed in luxurious noble attire. This is the Soul Society, the world of the Shinigami. His name is Akira Kisaragi, the head priest of the Sakahon Shrine in the Rukongai district, also known as the Kanushi. He couldn't quite remember how long it had been since he crossed over to this world. The initial period of struggle for food ended when he joined the shrine. Then, leveraging his understanding and familiarity with the role of a spiritual medium, he climbed step by step to the top of the shrine, becoming the head priest. Although the Sakahon Shrine consisted of only him and Nanao, this didn't diminish his status in Rukongai. As the sole head priest for several nearby districts, Akira wielded considerable authority. He personally handled rituals, exorcisms, and prayers, with Nanao as his assistant. However, in certain special situations, such as encounters with villains, rebels, unrest, or even hollows infiltrating Rukongai, she had to take the lead. Akira, after all, lacked systematic training and had no combat experience. Even with his innate talent, he couldn't translate it into sufficient fighting power. To address this vulnerability, Nanao, after careful deliberation, decided to send him to the academy for training. Though this might cause the Sakahon Shrine to lose some prestige, she prioritized the future of both the shrine and its head priest. Akira, however, harbored no grand ambitions, nor did he wish to enter the troublesome vortex of the Siriidii. His sole desire was to protect his small domain. Admittedly, this desire seemed quite luxurious in such a dangerous world. Yet, he believed he still had a glimmer of hope. For a year ago, his cheat code had already arrived. Check-in system, as the name suggests, one only needs to check in to continuously grow stronger, requiring less effort compared to the self-discipline of traditional training. However, when Akira delved deeper into understanding this cheat code, he discovered it was a complete disappointment. Daily, monthly, and yearly check-ins. The current 3 types of check-ins could only be described as progressively worse. On the first day of check-in, he received a high-quality broom that swept the floor smoothly, clean, and efficient. The second day's reward was 2 stone lanterns, perfect for placing at the shrine's entrance, emphasizing upright illumination. The third day's check-in reward was a set of high-quality Miko attire, which he gave to Nanao, significantly increasing the young woman's favor. This one was marginally useful. After that, the check-in rewards were mostly miscellaneous junk. Occasionally, he would encounter items that could improve his life, but useful items were few and far between. These included, but weren't limited to, Genryūsai's secret recipe for baked sweet potatoes, high-quality compito, sweet dried persimmons, and bound volumes of Seriidii communication. This situation persisted until the first monthly check-in. First monthly check-in successful. Obtained exclusive trait. Racial affinity. Racial affinity. Racial sees you as a friend, highly compatible with you, doubling your Riryoku, spiritual power, training speed. Benefiting from this new trait, Akira began to train in earnest. Although he still lagged behind the true prodigies, he stood out among ordinary civilians. Through his diligent efforts and the continuous rewards from check-ins, Akira's status panel had reached a relatively luxurious level by the eve of his academy entrance. Name: Akira Kisaragi. Identity: Sakahon Shrine Head Priest, Rukongai Commoner, Shino Academy First-Year Student, Ryatsu. Level 10 Zanjutsu. Level 10 Hakuda. Level 10 Hoho. Level 10 Kido. Level 10 Exclusive Trait, Racial Affinity. This simple yet comprehensive status panel clearly indicated his current strength. Based on his calculations and deductions, Akira's current power level was equivalent to that of a standard Shinigami in any division of the Godii 13. Despite the passage of time blurring his memory of the Bleach world's details, he knew that a squad member-level existence barely qualified as cannon fodder. Moreover, his current strength might not even match Nanao's. Nevertheless, this level was more than sufficient to secure his entry into the academy, and even land him a spot in the elite class. One could only attribute this success to his racial affinity trait. As Nanao's silhouette faded into the distance, Akira set aside his jumbled thoughts and fixed his gaze upon the academy's grand and imposing entrance. Location check-in: Shino Academy. Obtained exclusive trait: Danger Instinct. Danger Instinct. You have an innate, extraordinary sensitivity to danger. Especially when facing life-threatening crises, the sudden acquisition of this trait caused his senses to heighten dramatically, sharpening his perception of the world around him. Lurking dangers made his hair stand on end, and his entire being tensed. His weakness made him acutely aware of potential threats, as if the world itself harbored malice towards him. A gentle voice broke through his unease from behind. "Excuse me, are you also a new student at the academy?" Akira turned to see a young man wearing the same blue and white academy uniform. The stranger had a warm, sunshine-like smile, short brown hair with a slight curl, brown eyes, and a somewhat thin frame that gave an impression of frailty. "Yes, I'm Akira Kisaragi." Upon hearing his introduction, the gentle and refined young man's lips curved slightly upward as he spoke softly. "Nice to meet you. I'm Sosuke Aizen." Author's note: some explanations of terms to make it easier for everyone to understand. I will be using the original terms and will always provide explanations if necessary. Racial spirit particles. Riryoku spiritual power. Ryatsu spiritual pressure. Zanjutsu Zanpakuto oriented swordsmanship. Hakuda Shinigami hand-to-hand combat. Hoho step method or movement technique. Kido demon/spirit way spell technique. Heido path of destruction. For direct attacks, Bakudo, binding spell. For battle support, and Kaido, healing spiritual arts. For healing spells, Shino Academy. Spiritual Arts Academy 5 Noble Families. It's already noticeable that the events of this story take place many years before the original Bleach and Ichigo timeline. At this time, the Shiba family was still in power. Author's note: I'll be referring to Aizen by this name throughout, as it's the most recognizable to Bleach fans. For clarity, this is his surname, not his given name, Sosuke. He will probably only introduce himself by his first name in conversations, or when someone calls him, like the MC. His scalp tingled as a vague sensation of explosion burst between his temples. The name Sosuke Aizen undoubtedly shocked Akira, leaving him momentarily dazed. He never imagined he'd arrive at an unknown point in the Bleach world, instantly rendering his supposed foreknowledge half useless. He had originally planned to avoid Aizen and lay low, but unexpectedly, right after leaving the starting area, he ran head-on into the big boss. Kisaragi-kun, you seem to be a bit. No, I'm fine. Akira snapped back to his senses, shaking his head vigorously and regaining his composure. He looked towards Aizen, just in time to meet the other's slightly concerned gaze. Strangely, his danger instinct didn't detect even the slightest threat. In fact, his gentle and modest smile gave off a sense of warmth, involuntarily making one feel fond of the young man. Perhaps this was what they called personal charisma. That's good then. Aizen smiled. The reporting time is almost over. We should hurry up. Akira nodded, suppressing the information about Aizen in his heart, and entered the Shino Academy alongside him. First year, Class 1. After completing the relevant procedures, Akira and Aizen sat in the neat classroom, curiously surveying their equally inquisitive classmates. The students occupying this room were all geniuses who had excelled in the entrance exams. Akira humbly attributed his placement in Class 1 to sheer luck, maintaining a modest demeanor. Beside him sat Aizen, a true genius in every sense of the word. Akira, you've stared at me 37 times already, Aizen remarked without turning his head. Their brief exchanges had fostered a growing familiarity, evident in the subtle shift in how they addressed each other. This was largely due to his infectiously charismatic personality. It was precisely this charisma that piqued Akira's curiosity. Was Aizen's current persona genuine, or merely a facade? I'm pondering a question. Akira mused. Would you rather fight a duck the size of a horse, or 100 horses the size of ducks? Aizen's gaze froze. Before he could respond, Akira's attention shifted to a figure steadily approaching the podium. Is this our future teacher? His adaptable nature allowed him to quickly accept his unexpected status as Aizen's classmate. There was no escaping now. He could only embrace the reality calmly. I am your homeroom teacher, Yhwach. The middle-aged man, his face devoid of any smile, launched into the customary Startofterm speech. His endless stream of words seemed to flow with an ease that appeared to be an innate ability of every teacher. I hope that in the future, you will not only be able to join any division of the Genryūsai 13, but also, through training, continuously advance towards the center of power. The podium droned on, while the students below whispered among themselves. So Suke, is your goal also to become a member of the Genryūsai 13? Akira asked curiously. Or do you have an even loftier ambition? The current young man beside him was quite different from the psychobe controller, cynic egotist in his impression. Aizen turned slightly, appearing thoughtful. After a moment's pondering, he answered quietly. I think all students who join Shino Academy probably have similar ideals, don't you? After all, the purpose of the academy is to cultivate new blood for the Kido Corps, the Onmitsukido, and the Genryūsai 13. Akira leaned back, lacing his fingers behind his head with a grin. Nah, I'm not that ambitious. I'm all about taking it easy. My grand aspiration? Simply making it to graduation with my sanity intact. Aizen nodded slightly, his expression calm. To each their own. Ideals are merely what one most wants to achieve at the current stage. People always change to different degrees as time passes. Perhaps, in the near future, just as he was pondering, he noticed Akira's expression suddenly turn serious. Not today. As soon as the words left his mouth, a whooshing sound came from the direction of the podium. Akira tilted his head slightly, a piece of chalk grazing past his cheek and hitting the forehead of the student behind him. The exaggerated force left a white mark right between the other student's eyebrows. Smack! A crisp collision sound rang out. Damn, look at that bald eagle picking on me. Akira sneered disdainfully, extremely satisfied with his danger instinct ability. I know I'm handsome, but I don't like this much attention. While conversing, he had clearly sensed the impending danger. Instinctively tilting his head allowed him to avoid the crisis. Aizen shook his head with a wry smile, gaining a deeper understanding of his newly made friend. Though seemingly weak, Akira always displayed some peculiar qualities. He also had noticed the teacher's earlier movement, but hadn't expected this guy to dodge it so effortlessly. This inevitably piqued his curiosity about his recently met companion. Akira Kisaragi, Sosuke Aizen, Yuroi called out. He was somewhat surprised that a new student could evade his sneak attack, but didn't dwell on it. Maintaining classroom discipline, he continued, Please remain quiet. Let's return to our previous topic. He chose not to focus on Akira's rule violation. In his view, a teacher should possess a certain level of tolerance. Otherwise, rebellious students would inevitably cause his blood pressure to skyrocket. However, he had underestimated someone's lack of boundaries. Before long, this naive teacher would realize the extent of his mistake. The first day of school focused primarily on academy rules, teaching objectives, and motivational speeches about diligent training, rather than substantial learning content. As a modern-day slacker, Akira viewed these words as mere nonsense. Naturally, he wouldn't voice his disagreement openly. In his mind, the most crucial task now was to uncover his cheat abilities and master more powerful skills as quickly as possible to achieve his newly set grand ideal. His recent success in meeting the check-in conditions at Shino Academy and receiving rewards had sparked numerous ideas. He wondered if location check-ins, in addition to daily check-ins, might accelerate his path to strength. However, it seemed ordinary locations weren't enough to meet these check-in conditions. This realization led Akira to ponder what special locations existed in the Soul Society. "So Suke, are you familiar with the Soul Society?" "Somewhat," Aizen replied, an extremely modest answer, befitting his current personality. Having racked his brains to no avail, Akira decided to pose the question directly. "Are there any important buildings in the Soul Society similar to Shino Academy?" As the future mastermind and a true all-around genius, such a small question shouldn't pose a challenge for Aizen. "Many," Aizen replied. "There's the Godiai 13 headquarters, Kido Corps headquarters, Central Underground Assembly Hall, Central Great Underground Prison, Senzakyu, Palace of Penitence, Central Execution Ground, Sokayaka Hill, Noble Family Mansions, and more. Their importance even surpasses that of Shino Academy." "I see." Akira's disappointment was palpable. As a mere academy student, he had no access to these places, rendering check-ins impossible. He'd have to resort to grinding daily check-ins instead. He hoped for better luck in the future. After all, surely one's luck can't remain bad forever, right? Godiai 13, 13 Division Imperial Guards or 13 Court Guard Companies. Main Combat Unit Kido Corps. Separate branch of Soul Society's military that excels in the art of Kido spells. Onmitsukido. Secret tactics or stealth force. Aizen was puzzled by Akira's disappointed expression, unsure why an academy student would be curious about such matters. Seeing that he had no intention of continuing the discussion, he didn't press the issue further. As a student at the Shino Academy, Aizen uncovered secrets he'd never known before, about the hierarchical structure of Soul Society and even the entire world. He struggled to understand why Genryūsai Yamamoto, the captain commander of the Godiai 13 with unparalleled strength in Soul Society, had to submit to the so-called nobles. The nobles' behavior was nauseating, yet they held such power. And what of the Central 46, Soul Society's highest judicial authority? What role did they play in this complex system? Aizen vowed to seek answers to these questions, determined to unravel every secret this world held. Academy life allowed Akira to recapture a bit of his past. In his spare time, he used his expertise as a shrine priest to exorcise demons for young, beautiful girls in the name of chivalry, promoting the Sakahon Shrine. The pure friendships of student days were often the most touching. Ah, what a wonderful time. Of course, there were drawbacks. After growing accustomed to sleeping until he waked up naturally at the Sakahon Shrine, Akira suddenly found himself unable to adjust his biological clock. Every morning at 7, when the bell rang, he was plunged into a state of confusion. Back to the daily grind, swapping freedom for boring lectures, saying goodbye to lazy mornings. Man, school life's a drag. Countless similar phrases surged through his mind as Aizen, already washed and dressed, knocked on his door to walk to class together. Is this what life is? Akira groaned weakly, like a wounded beast, struggling to get up from bed and barely managing to don the blue and white academy uniform. When he opened the door, Aizen's familiar, gentle smile greeted him. Though unsure why, Akira realized this guy clearly intended to stick close, following him around since enrollment. The plan to lay low and develop quietly was thus declared a failure. Fortunately, his words and actions weren't detestable. Rather, the gentle young man seemed most suitable for the role of a friend. "You'd better tidy up your appearance," Aizen kindly reminded Akira on their way to the classroom. Since befriending this priest, he had gained deeper insight into human nature. He discovered that the boundaries of acceptable behavior could be surprisingly flexible without causing offense. Was this an innate talent? This morning's class is with teacher Omida. He's particularly strict about proper attire. Having attended classes for some time now, Aizen had grasped the teacher's personalities and preferences, always advising his careless companion accordingly. Akira nodded listlessly, appearing utterly exhausted. Omida will have to endure his boasting about his family background again. It's despicable. These nobles leech off the common folk in Rakongai, yet they live so comfortably. Aizen glanced sideways and mused. Akira, do you harbor such strong resentment towards the nobility? No, I resent not being one of them. Akira replied, casually draping his arm over Aizen's shoulder with a grin. After all, the dragon slayer often becomes the dragon. Author's note. This phrase suggests that those who spend too much time fighting against or resenting the nobility risk becoming what they despise. It echoes Nietzsche's warning. He who fights with monsters should look to it that he himself does not become a monster. Aizen seemed lost in thought. In the classroom, Marekyo Omida stood on the podium, his muscular build and stern expression commanding attention. He surveyed each entering student with a fierce gaze. Unlike his obese appearance after retirement, the current Marekyo was an elite among elites, despite his penchant for flaunting family wealth. He excelled in all aspects: Zanjutsu, Hakuda, Ho-Ho, and Kido. His Hakuda, hand-to-hand, skills were particularly outstanding, earning him a position as the Hakuda instructor at the Shino Academy in his spare time. Once all students had arrived, Marekyo lowered his hands, his expression growing even more solemn. Before we begin the class, let me explain something. As entrance exam elites, you've all made remarkable progress. After this class, specialized personnel will assess your Hakuda level. Now let's begin. Without allowing questions, he launched into his Hakuda lecture. Akira paid close attention. After all, this concerned his future. Given his recent streak of disappointing check-in rewards, he knew he had to become self-reliant. Aizen, usually the most attentive listener, seemed uncharacteristically distracted. It wasn't until Akira waved a hand in front of his eyes that he snapped back to reality, his expression peculiar. Thank you, Akira. Akira raised an eyebrow quizzically. Aizen smiled and explained, I've just had a revelation. At that moment, a familiar voice resonated in Akira's mind. Sosuke Aizen's trust level has reached the threshold. Check-in condition achieved. Character check-in. Sosuke Aizen. Obtained 1000 EXP in Ryatsu. Ryatsu level increased. Currently at level 20. Obtained exclusive trait. Heart of a god. Heart of a god. Supreme arrogance, viewing oneself as a true god. Talent for learning anything is raised to the max of the current realm. Author's note. This means that his potential has been raised to maximum capacity. There is no bottleneck or need to train for centuries to reach a level that only true geniuses can achieve. Akira inhaled sharply, his expression morphing from shock to bewilderment, then to unbridled joy, all within a fraction of a second. This rapid transformation was so remarkable that even Aizen was startled. He had initially believed location check-ins were unbeatable, but this new development proved even more potent. It was an unexpected and thrilling surprise. Since befriending Aizen, Akira had often felt inferior due to his perceived lack of genius. Now it seemed those days were over. His newfound talent would surpass even the controlling boy's abilities. The acquisition of the heart of a god instantly heightened his senses to extraordinary levels, transforming his perception of the world. He realized that the world through a genius's eyes was vastly different from that of an ordinary person. As Akira reveled in this exhilarating revelation, Marekyo's lecture drew to a close. That concludes today's class. Next up is your assessment. His hawk-like gaze swept across the room. Overwhelmed by his aura, the students held their breath, some even lowering their heads to avoid eye contact. However, when he spotted Akira lost in his own world, his brows furrowed. Marekyo had an impression of this shrine priest from the Sakahon Shrine. Decent talent, above average for a first year, but with an unstable personality. A troublemaker who often violated rules and discipline. He'd talked back to teachers, exorcised demons for female classmates under the guise of chivalry, and openly advertised for the Sakahon Shrine. Marekyo's gaze intensified. He hoped this kid wouldn't cause trouble in the upcoming test. Otherwise, he'd make Akira understand the true meaning of resolve. Just then, a dark shadow approached from outside. The window shattered with a crisp sound, scattering countless glass shards across the podium. A hearty, arrogant laugh followed. Haha, are you ready to face your miserable fate, newbies? On the podium stood a dark-skinned girl with her purple short hair. She crossed her arms and grinned, her clean white teeth gleaming in the sunlight. Next, I, Yuruchi Shihoin, will be your Hakuda examiner. The young woman on stage exuded youthful beauty, captivating the young man in the audience. In Akira's mind, Yuruchi had always been a sexy, mature woman. Yet, after her self-introduction, he felt transported to a different reality. Despite this, her behavior revealed a cheerful personality with an unmatched talent for mischief and teasing. Yuruchi Shihoin? Could she be from the Shihoin family? A student exclaimed in surprise. Many noble-born students recognized the weight of the Shihoin name. One of the true upper echelons of the Soul Society, a supreme power that towered above countless nobles. One of the 4 great noble houses, the Shihoin family. Aizen's enigmatic gaze betrayed a fading smile. As his attention shifted to Akira beside him, his expression froze. The young man sat upright, eyes fixed ahead, the picture of propriety. He might have passed for a model student, if one failed to notice where his gaze truly fell. What are you looking at? Aizen asked in a low, curious voice. Akira glanced sideways, a smirk playing on his lips. Heh, what a question. I'm appreciating the most beautiful sight in the world, of course. Aizen's expression stiffened, and he dropped the subject. He realized, not for the first time, that he and his friend often operated on different wavelengths. While others reeled from the revelation of Yuruchi's identity, Akira had already begun admiring her physique. It was a behavior difficult to categorize. On stage, Yuruchi's gaze swept the room. As the Shihoin family's heir apparent, her exceptional abilities were evident. She immediately detected the bold stare from the handsome young man from the back of the class. In response, the corner of the dark-skinned woman's mouth curled up, her delicate fang glinting dangerously in the sunlight. Let's start from my left side. Akira glanced around, suddenly realizing that if they proceeded in order, he and Aizen would be last. The assessment officially began. Yuruchi wore a black bodysuit that accentuated her beautiful, slightly curved figure. Still in her teenage years, she hadn't yet developed the captivating charm she would possess a century later. Even so, her presence was mesmerizing. However, due to her status, the students engaging in Hakuda, hand-to-hand, combat with her didn't dare raise their heads, fearing Morekyo might catch them and send them to the Sokayaka Hill execution grounds. Are you ready? Why, yes, I'm ready, a frail male student replied, his legs trembling slightly. Yuruchi let out a light laugh. Her figure suddenly appeared before the male student like a ghost, her slender fingers gently stroking like plucking guitar strings, pressing against his completely unguarded chest. The seemingly harmless move suddenly burst forth with astonishing impact. The contact of flesh, a pure release of force, resonated thunderously. Boom! In an instant, the student's fair face turned bright red, as if all the blood in his body had rushed to his head. After a brief moment of resistance, his entire body became a human cannonball, flying backward and slamming hard against the classroom wall, sticking to it like a hanging picture, knocking people out like hanging pictures. A decisive victory without suspense. Akira's eyes widened. Good grief. Was Yuruchi already this formidable at this age? Unsteady footwork, weak limbs. Yuruchi commented, not even the most basic sense of vigilance. Morekyo, the students you're teaching are getting worse and worse. Morekyo broke out in a cold sweat, managing only an embarrassed smile, not daring to refute at all. No one knew Yuruchi's current strength better than him. Even if one excluded the decisive factor of Ryatsu, spiritual pressure, in terms of technique alone, he couldn't match her. The difference lay in talent. Next, Yuruchi was in high spirits, treating the assessment of weaker students as a form of entertainment. Given her personality, it seemed she was simply playing around. Following the example set by the first victim, students approached one after another, only to be swiftly defeated. Most were knocked down in a single hit, with only a handful of prodigies able to withstand a second strike. Of course, this was purely Hakuda technique, without involving any Ryatsu. After numerous students lay scattered across the classroom, her gaze finally fell on Aizen and Akira. Next one, Yuruchi grinned. Aizen's gaze flickered with hesitation before he calmly stepped forward. As before, she merely asked if he was ready. Once he nodded, she launched her attack. An unexpected event unfolded. Akira's eyes widened, disbelief flashing across them. The invincible Aizen had fallen. Just like the others before him, he was knocked out without suspense in a single hit. This undoubtedly reshapes Akira's understanding of this world. Others might not know, but he couldn't possibly be unaware. In terms of genius, few in the entire Soul Society could surpass Aizen. Not even the 4 great noble houses. This point was absolutely indisputable. Yet looking at the beaten boy lying on the ground, his breath weak, seemingly on the verge of collapse, Akira found himself once again in a daze. Author's note: look how they massacred my boy. Your acting is so good. Does your family know? Another rookie. Yuruchi didn't give Aizen a second glance, instead turning her gaze to Akira. A dangerous aura immediately enveloped him. You're the last one. With a playful gaze like a cat toying with its prey, her slightly exposed fang glinted dangerously. She beckoned to him. Come on, young man, let me see your Hakuda skills. Akira forced out a reluctant smile. Although he prided himself on his talent being no less than others, he knew there was always a transition period to convert talent into actual strength. As he hesitated, Marekio loudly urged, hurry up, Kisaragi. Don't think about using those underhanded methods to avoid the assessment. Author's note: he called the MC by his last name, just to make it clear. Akira calmed his mind and walked forward with a determined expression. It's just getting beaten up, right? It's not like he hasn't been beaten before. As long as he learned from Aizen, everything would be fine. He had already planned to take one hit, and then just lie down. But, looking at the playful gaze of the dark-skinned woman in front of him, he suddenly felt a surge of alertness. His survival instinct exploded with a sharp warning. Damn it, this woman is getting serious. Akira's pupils contracted, his senses sharpened to the extreme, instinctively entering a battle state. Without asking, without any preparation, Yuruchi's slender fingers gently stroked like plucking guitar strings, then clenched into a fist. In the instant her light footstep moved forward, boom. Her thin fist, accompanied by a piercing sound of air being cut, burst forth with a shockwave, heading straight for his face. The surging energy erupted, transforming into a fierce hurricane, as if a bomb had exploded. Akira's vision darkened, his ears ringing from the impact. Even without using Ryatsu, spiritual pressure, Yuruchi's pure combination of strength and technique was enough to achieve absolute dominance at this stage. Akira's heart sank as he instinctively dodged to the side, trying to avoid this fatal attack. No one understood her devastating punch better than him. A direct hit would result in severe injury at best, death at worst. This woman has gone mad. Her seemingly slender fist grazed past his cheek, its impact transforming into an explosive hurricane. He felt as if he were caught in the dark currents of the deep sea, his body pulled and stretched like putty. An unprecedented sensation. Danger lurked everywhere. The hurricane slammed into the solid ground with a boom, creating hideous cracks that resembled gaping, bloody mouths, a display of raw ferocity and danger. Cold sweat trickled down the bridge of Akira's nose, his nerves stretched to their limit. Well, not bad at all. Yuruchi praised. You're the first freshman to dodge my punch. Since you're so talented, let's raise the difficulty a bit. It'll serve as a lesson for the other freshmen too. Hakuda, being the last resort for the Shinigami, must be mastered by every academy student before graduation. Consider this some extra tutoring. As the staggering students turned their gaze to the two in the arena, she moved again. To everyone's surprise, they found their eyes could actually track the girl's movements this time. Though extremely difficult to comprehend, if they forced themselves to remember it, this could still be considered a Hakuda secret technique. In contrast, Akira's gaze appeared slightly dazed, his body still as a statue. Seeing this, Yuruchi shook her head in disappointment. Though this guy was quite impolite, a small lesson would suffice. However, in his world, the moment she launched her attack, her posture was instantly broken down into dozens of parts. Arms, legs, waist, torso. Even the slight tremors in front were meticulously distinguished. At this moment, Akira was like a dry sponge, eagerly absorbing the key points of this Hakuda technique. In just a brief moment, he had grasped and digested all its advantages and disadvantages, transforming them into his own. Heart of a god. As he fully grasped the rhythm of Yuruchi's technique, he realized the true potential of his unique trait, Heart of a God. While it didn't grant him raw power, It offered limitless potential. With this ability alone, he could reach the pinnacle of skill. A brilliant light flickered in his eyes, and his aura transformed dramatically. Aizen, now at the sidelines, watched his friend in the arena with keen interest. The slight curve of his lips betrayed that his mood was far from calm. Yuruchi noticed Akira's change, but she was already committed to her attack. Gritting her teeth, she charged towards the seemingly defenseless young man, her fist exploding forward. Janjanken. Slap. With a crisp sound, Akira's palm met Yuruchi's fist, a movement as light and gentle as lovers playfully tussling. Yet the moment they connected, it erupted into a heart-palpitating boom, sending surging waves of energy in all directions. Though it caused no major damage, the academy students who had suffered her beating stood dumbfounded, scarcely believing their eyes. He blocked it. How could he possibly do that? Countless similar thoughts crashed like waves through everyone's minds. They couldn't fathom the scene before them, and were even more reluctant to accept that they might lose to an unknown shrine priest from a small shrine. Over their time as classmates, the academy students had gradually learned about Akira's background. Despite his status as a shrine priest, this young man, hailing from Rakongai, still paled in comparison to the wealthy and noble inhabitants of Siriidii. Yet this commoner had momentarily matched a prodigy from the Shohoin family in the Hakuda test. Oh, you blocked it. Yuruchi looked up at the tall young man, her delicate face showing surprise. That's unexpected. To think you'd use this method to counter. Are you a Hakuda genius? As her words reached his ears, Akira maintained a calm exterior, but beneath the surface, his mental state was approaching chaos. The difference in strength between them had become too great to ignore. Even receiving her punch with his palm had nearly shattered the bones in his hand. If not for his iron will and determination to maintain his dignity, he would have cried out in pain. Endure, he must endure. He couldn't let his hard-earned reputation crumble here. Yuruchi seemed to notice his struggle. She chuckled, her slender wrist turning as she launched another Hakuda technique. This time, it was close-quarters grappling. The brutal force acted on his arms, severely limiting his movement. Fortunately, Akira managed to free her right hand, giving himself a glimmer of hope. Yuruchi pressed her advantage, unleashing increasingly exquisite Hakuda techniques. Her movements grew swifter and fiercer, like a terrifying hurricane threatening to engulf him completely. Yet, in the face of such overwhelming power, Akira was like a small boat on a vast ocean, seemingly on the verge of capsizing, but always managing to cleverly stay afloat. Under her strong suppression, he continuously utilized his heart of a god, learning the true essence of the Hakuda techniques even as they threatened to overwhelm him. As the two continued their intense battle, Marekyo, watching from the sidelines, noticed something odd. Wait a minute. How had the two of them ended up so entangled during their fight? Yuruchi had Akira's right hand pinned against his chest. Her legs were wrapped around his neck in a scissor hold, and only his left hand blocking her thighs prevented his head from being crushed. Meanwhile, his legs were locked around her waist. Both fighters were restraining each other, with Akira seemingly having a slight positional advantage. He knew that Yuruchi's competitive spirit had kept her from using her Ryatsu, relying solely on technique, a weakness he'd managed to exploit. In a true life-or-death battle, he suspected she would have obliterated him instantly. Lady Yuruchi has Akira in a lock. No, you're wrong. From where I'm standing, Akira has Lady Yuruchi locked. The heated debate among the academy students finally snapped Marekyo out of his daze. As he came to his senses, he realized just how suggestive the fighter's posture had become. Off to the side, Aizen's gaze intensified, a hint of intrigue in his eyes. Interesting. Another genius in hiding, just like himself? As the two were locked together, Yuruchi's cheeks flushed slightly. Though barely noticeable due to her dark skin, her expression betrayed intense excitement. A pleasant cracking sound followed. Crack! Her face stiffened, and she instinctively released her scissor lock. Just as she was about to make her next move, Akira sharply inhaled and said through gritted teeth, "Don't move. It's broken." The evenly matched skills had sent Yuruchi into such an excited state that she momentarily lost control of her Ryatsu and strength. This brief outburst crushed his arm mercilessly, even though he noticed the abnormality at the critical moment and immediately unleashed all of his own Ryatsu. His actual spirit class is rank 17. For context, the standard for a Shinigami officer is rank 20, A lieutenant is rank 4 or 5, and rank 3 and above is captain level. Akira's current personal status shows his Ryatsu as level 20, which corresponds exactly to rank 17 spirit class if calculated based on a maximum of 100. Author's note, brief explanation. Imagine Ryatsu as nuclear radiation that is constantly emitted. Reisher, spirit particle, is a nuclear particle. The more radiation a certain particle is capable of emitting, the higher its spirit class rank becomes. Basically, this means that there is much more energy, Riryoku, and much more powerful, Ryatsu, in just one body, a vessel of Reisher, so to speak. I hope you understood. While this level might be considered outstanding among many academy students, compared to Yoruchi, the difference was vast. The moment she unleashed her Ryatsu, Akira personally experienced what it meant to face an insurmountable gap, to truly confront an impassable divide. As their Ryatsu clashed, he envisioned towering mountains collapsing and endless mudslides surging forward in a magnificent spectacle, obliterating his stubborn resistance with overwhelming force. Yoruchi, seeming to notice her loss of composure, released his right arm, now twisted like a pretzel, with an embarrassed smile. His entire arm was grotesquely contorted, its bones and muscles pulverized by the brutal Ryatsu and force, causing the skin to turn a horrifying deep purple. Akira attempted to move his right hand, but it remained unresponsive. "Little righty, don't you dare die on me." His exaggerated expression, tinged with genuine pain, was mostly for show. However, it made Yoruchi feel even more guilty, to the point where she couldn't meet his gaze. The over-the-top display made Aizen's expression stiffen. He suddenly realized that being friends with this guy might not be such an honorable endeavor after all. Marekyo appeared before Akira, frowning as he carefully examined the limp, twisted right arm. After a moment, he let out a sigh of relief. It's not severe enough to require amputation. However, the Kido Corps' doctors likely can't handle such a serious injury. Marekyo turned to the lectern and quickly wrote out a certificate, detailing the incident. "Take this to the 4th Division's Coordinated Relief Station. Captain Unohana will personally treat you. Sosuke Aizen, accompany him." Aizen nodded reluctantly. Yoruchi raised her hand, seemingly wanting to go along. But after seeing Marekyo's pleading look, she pouted and temporarily abandoned the idea. After the two left, he dismissed the other students for the day. Soon, only the two of them remained in the classroom. He let out a heavy sigh and looked at the unrepentant dark-skinned young woman. "Lady Yoruchi, you promised me you wouldn't act recklessly." This time the boy was lucky, only breaking an arm. If you had locked his head, the consequences could have been dire. Yoruchi defended herself. "This wasn't reckless. I just got caught up in the moment. At the beginning of the fight, that guy's Hakuda skills were quite ordinary, but as the battle progressed..." She frowned, suddenly realizing something unsettling. She had focused solely on Hakuda due to her Zanpakuto-esque nature, achieving outstanding results that even high-ranking officers couldn't match. But in the recent battle, that young man's progress could no longer be described as merely rapid. It was as if he was cheating. Every technique she used was quickly assimilated by him in a very short time, then performed even more perfectly. Such a genius would easily outclass many members of the Shohoin family. He might even rival a captain. As she pondered in silence, Marekyo sensed the strange atmosphere and cautiously spoke up. "Lady Yoruchi." The dark-skinned young woman suddenly looked up, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "Marekyo, what do you think? How about recruiting this guy as a son-in-law for the Shohoin family?" Yoruchi's sudden leap in logic made his eyes widen. He inhaled sharply, feeling a stinging pain between his teeth. Yet, compared to the toothache, he was far more troubled by her suggestion. From the intelligence about Akira often performing exorcisms for female classmates, this guy's level of lechery rivaled, if not surpassed, that of the 8th Division's Captain Shunsui Kairaku. If Lady Yoruchi chose to use herself as bait, Akira would undoubtedly agree. Contemplating this, Marekyo's burly body shuddered, as if he had foreseen a terrifying future. After all, the Omida family was closely tied to the Shohoin family. On the small path leading to the 4th Division barracks, two young men in academy uniforms walked side by side. It would have been a harmonious scene if not for the constant wailing of one embarrassing fellow. "Sosuke, do you think my little righty can truly be restored? With Captain Unohana's medical skills, it shouldn't be a problem." "That's wonderful. Little Righty is my beloved friend and brother. I'd rather die than see it harmed. Aizen sighed helplessly at his friend's dramatics. Shouldn't a normal person be crying out from the pain of such a severe injury? Why was this guy so fixated on whether his right arm could be restored? And what was with the strange nickname Little Righty? Because his name contained the character Forbright. Every time Akira wailed Little Righty, he felt an odd discomfort. It was as if he wasn't mourning his right hand, but mourning Aizen himself. Author's note, Sosuke, Aizen, right. The mental image this conjured was so disturbing that even the usually composed Aizen couldn't help but shudder, quickening his pace towards the 4th Division barracks. Due to the vast size of the Siriidii, even though the two moved at their fastest speed, it still took nearly a day to reach their destination. After presenting the certificate given by Marekio, the guard Shinigami not only let them pass, but also assigned someone to guide them. Soon, the group arrived at a spotless hospital room. The moment Akira stepped inside, a familiar voice sounded in his ears. Check-in conditions met. Location check-in. Shinigami, Death God or Soul Reaper Spirit class. Density of Ryatsu in someone's body. Location check-in. Retsu Unohana's private ward. Obtained 1000 EXP in Zanjutsu. Zanjutsu level increased. Currently at level 20. Obtained exclusive trait. Miraculous healing. Miraculous healing. Exceptional medical skills and the ability to restore life. Firmly believes that as long as there's life, there's hope. Kaido, healing spell. Effect increased by 100%. An unexpected delight. Akira's eyes lit up, momentarily forgetting the bone-chilling pain in his right hand. He had assumed only significant locations like the Shino Academy would meet the check-in conditions. Yet a mere private ward also fulfilled the requirements. Kaido, or healing spiritual arts, is a branch of Kido. While it lacks destructive power, it's indispensable in logistics. The 4th Division is the largest among the Godii 13. Unlike Akira, who stared at the black-haired woman before him with an unabashedly lewd gaze, Aizen instinctively tensed up the moment he sensed her presence, naturally suppressing his vast Ryatsu. The pure white, voluminous captain's Haori, embroidered with the character for, draped down. Her thick black hair, braided and falling in front, concealed an impressive figure. Her exquisitely beautiful face bore a gentle, kind smile, exuding an innate warmth. The respectful, admiring gazes of the guard Shinigami and 4th Division members nearby clearly indicated her high status within the division. 4th Division Captain, Retsu Unohana. However, in Aizen's eyes, it was an entirely different scene. A vast sea of blood pressed down from above. An extreme, bone-chilling cold permeated the surroundings. Endless killing intent seeped through every pore, reaching deep into his internal organs. It was truly spine-chilling. He subconsciously ignored her beautiful, gentle face. The person sitting there wasn't the beloved Captain Unohana, but a vicious demon returned from the depths of hell. Was this the true worth of a Godii 13 captain? Aizen had never encountered other captains before. Unohana was the first he'd met since arriving in the Siriidii. Author's note, I'll also call her Unohana. Like Aizen, no one knows her by her given name. The slight contempt he had harbored before vanished instantly. If all the captains were like this woman, perhaps the Siriidii wouldn't be as dull as he had imagined. Suppressing his inner thoughts, he supported Akira as they approached Unohana. Two peculiar young men in blue and white Shino Academy uniforms stood before her. One with an inappropriate gaze, the other wary of his surroundings. How odd. Neither seemed to show a hint of due respect. Academy student, please come closer, Unohana said gently. Your injury can't be left untreated any longer. Hearing this, Akira snapped back to reality. He sat directly opposite her, lifting his numb right hand and placing it on her thigh. The most convenient position given how they were seated. Unohana was momentarily taken aback, but didn't dwell on it. Adhering to her professional ethics, she carefully examined his injured hand and began the healing process. She extended her fair hands, her fingers moving gracefully as emerald green Kaido light blossomed from her fingertips. Strong Ryatsu flowed into the deep purple skin. A tingling sensation arose from deep within the bones, accompanied by crisp sounds as the twisted bones realigned. To her surprise, Akira remained stoic throughout the treatment, not uttering a single cry of pain. As the 4th Division captain with the highest Kaido and medical skills in Seoul society, she had treated countless patients and encountered many individuals with strong willpower. But a contradictory existence like Akira was unprecedented. His lecherous gaze suggested he was cut from the same cloth as Shunsui Kairaku. Such men usually lacked willpower, their minds clouded by their lustful nature. A young man both lecherous and strong-willed was truly a rare sight. Even Aizen seemed surprised as he reassessed Akira, as if seeing him anew. Well, no need to look at me with such admiring eyes, Sosuke, Akira said with a grin. As a man, this little pain is nothing. Even if it were 10 times stronger, I wouldn't show the slightest. Before he could finish, his face suddenly contorted, his features scrunching up to their limits. Ah, sorry, I forgot to warn you. A gentle voice reached both their ears as Unohana smiled. To correct fractured bones, they need to be crushed and then reconstructed. This way, there won't be any after effects. Looking at the gentle face so close to him, Akira gained a clear understanding of a demon's smile for the first time. How devious. The treatment process was mercifully brief. As the Kaido light faded, Akira felt his right hand regain its former vitality. For follow-up treatment, you'll need medication, Unohana said, instructing a squad member to bring external use ointment. She explained the method and frequency of use in detail, then added, also, the treatment fee comes to 1,123 Laotian kips. Laotian kip equals can. Will you two be paying on credit or in cash? Akira's eyes widened in disbelief. He never imagined such cruel words could come from such a pretty mouth. I never said the treatment was free, you know, Unohana said with a smile. Akira, this was mentioned in class. Aizen sighed. Except for Shinigami squad members injured on duty, all other injuries and illnesses require paid treatment. Don't tell me you weren't listening. Our poor, naive little priest's face fell. He had no interest in anything other than Zanjutsu, Hakuta, Ho-Ho, and Kido. In most classes, he usually passed the time daydreaming and dozing off. Come to think of it, he was clearly the victim. So why did he have to pay the bill himself? Sosuke, we're friends, right? Akira's eyes rolled. Could you possibly? Before he could finish, Aizen cut him off flatly. No, I can't. I'm broke. Both were commoners. And even though Akira was a shrine priest at Sakahon Shrine, he hadn't managed to save much money. As for Aizen, his pockets were emptier than his expression. Strictly speaking, he didn't have much desire for money. Otherwise, with his abilities, he could easily achieve financial freedom. Seeing his good friend abandon him, Akira miserably chose to pay on credit, promising that if he couldn't repay before joining a squad, he'd join the 4th Division and start from the bottom as a squad member. On the street outside the squad barracks, Akira stood with his arms folded, brows furrowed. After this incident, he realized the importance of money. With this thought, he suddenly raised his head. Sosuke, let's go make some money together. Aizen POV, my name is Sosuke Aizen, a first-year student at the Shino Academy. Thanks to my considerable aptitude, I was placed in Elite Class 1. Initially, I intended to use the academy as a platform to uncover secrets and find peers who could match my intellect. But how did things end up like this? On a small path in the academy, there's a table adorned with a fan and a ruler. A banner flutters in the wind, proclaiming, Chief Priest of Sakahon Shrine. Akira sits behind the table, affecting an air of importance, while I stand behind him, arms crossed and expressionless. Sosuke, don't just stand there like an idiot. He whispers urgently, I'm the chief priest. I can't lower myself to hawking my wares. So it's fine if I lower myself, is it? Hearing the crowd's chatter buzzing around me like flies, I decide to keep my thoughts to myself. I'm already regretting having greeted this guy when I first enrolled. In all my decades of life, Akira is the most unprincipled person I've ever encountered. I never imagined his money-making schemes would extend to expanding the Sakahon Shrine's business within the academy. It's even more outrageous than before. Exorcisms, blessings, prayers, communicating with deities, peddling various talismans. He dabbles in every possible shrine-related business. He appears omnipotent, but in reality, he's a jack of all trades, master of none. I shake my head, waiting for his inevitable crash and burn. Sojin POV, my name is Sojin Kachiki, eldest son of the Kachiki clan, one of the 5 noble families. Despite having professional tutors and my father's personal guidance, I chose to study at the Shino Academy. Here, I can experience things beyond the confines of my family's estate. Just like now. Author's note. Here ends the first-person perspective, Sakahon Shrine. He stared at the black characters on the banner, lost in thought. If he remembers correctly, this shrine seems, hey, don't pass by without a look. Fortune in career, love, and wealth. Young man, what are you waiting for? Seeing a potential customer approach, Akira greeted him enthusiastically. Sojin's expression freezed, sensing something off about this vendor's words. Fortunately, his kind and gentle nature prevented him from dwelling on these details. He smiled and asked, "Do you have any talismans that can protect the wearer from illness and misfortune?" Hearing this, Akira is greatly disappointed, feeling his talents are wasted. He can only pick out a talisman from those displayed on the table to hand to the young noble. Sojin took the talisman and examined it carefully. As the heir of a great noble family, his knowledge is quite extensive. Due to his naturally weak constitution, his father, Jinrei Kachiki, has gone to great lengths for him. He has seen hundreds of different talisman styles, but this is the first time he's encountered one like this. The delicate white wooden chip, wrapped in a red string, is adorned with an unusual pattern. A huge black right hand enveloped in luxurious clothing. Its anthropomorphic posture gives a sense of sacredness and inviolability. On the back of the right hand, a single eye is slightly closed, its indifferent gaze fixed ahead. It seems familiar, Sojin mused, fiddling with the talisman as he tried to recall the source of this familiarity. For this unique and powerful talisman, the price is just a tiny and insignificant amount of 1,000 Laotian kips. Akira said with a crooked merchant's smile, naming an exorbitant price. Sojin frowned slightly, realizing the inappropriateness of this price. "Young man, don't hesitate." Akira cajoled. "The Sakahon Shrine is renowned. The one-eyed great deity will surely bless you with good health." After a moment's hesitation, Sojin took out a 1,000 Laotian kips bill and handed it to him. Just then, an angry voice bellowed from the end of the distant street. "Akira Kisaragi Sosuke Aizen, how dare you behave so recklessly within the Shino Academy?" Akira cursed under his breath. Then with a wave of his hand, he lifted the table. "Sosuke, it's getting windy out here. Time to make like a tree and leave." To the astonishment of the two onlookers, he carried the table and dashed off at an incredible speed, disappearing from sight. "Young man, the Sakahon Shrine offers after-sales service. If you need anything, come to East Rakongai, District 76. Before he could finish, his figure had completely vanished. Seeing this, Aizen's mouth twitched. He nodded to Sojin, then chased after Akira's escape route. His speed was even greater than that of this quack shrine priest. By the time Yhwach, their teacher, arrived at the scene, only Sojin was left standing there. "Lo Lord Sojin, that Akira fellow didn't say anything strange to you, did he?" Realizing the identity of the person before him, Yhwach felt a headache coming on. "That bastard didn't con this young master of the Kachiki family, did he?" You should know, Sojin had an excellent reputation in the Shino Academy, known for his gentleness and kindness, without any of the airs of a great noble. If that guy had conned such a good person, he'd truly be beyond redemption. Sojin shook his head with a wry smile. "No." Hearing this, Yhwach breathed a sigh of relief, his tense nerves relaxing a bit. "That's good. I'll go chase those two guys now. Lord Sojin, please excuse me." Sojin nodded slightly in acknowledgement. After Yhwach left, he raised his right hand, fingers spread. On the white wooden chip tied with a red string, the deep single eye gazed indifferently ahead. Perhaps it was an illusion, or maybe it was truly effective. While holding this talisman, Sojin felt his body become somewhat lighter. It was as if half of the accumulated impurities had been cleared away. After a moment of examination, he clutched the talisman tightly and said in a low voice, "Akira Kisaragi, is it? I'll remember this name." In the first-year dormitory, Akira put down his belongings and flopped unceremoniously onto the soft bed. Beside him, Aizen pondered a question. Why had he followed this fool in such an undignified escape through the Shino Academy? Could stupidity be contagious? What a haul! Akira's cheer soon attracted his attention. As expected, fleecing rich dogs is the quickest way to make money. Rich dogs. Didn't you notice? That guy had a star-pulling hairpin. An accessory only upper-class nobles are allowed to wear. Is that why you charged him such a high price? Aizen's tone suddenly became calm, his scrutinizing gaze falling on his friend. How narrow-minded. Akira turned over, looking at him with disdain. That talisman is genuine. 1,000 Laotian kips is, if anything, too little, infused with the Ryatsu of the one-eyed great deity. It's one of the few masterpieces of the Sakahon shrine. Aizen frowned slightly, asking in confusion. The deity worshipped by the Sakahon shrine is called the one-eyed great deity? Akira nodded, grinning. The object that commemorates the Spirit King's right arm. The one-eyed great deity. Mimahagi. Mimahagi. Aizen looked puzzled, having never heard such a name before. But judging from the phrase, the thing that commemorates the Spirit King's right arm. If everything Akira said was true, this one-eyed great god named Mimahagi might indeed hold a great secret. So, do you believe in gods, young man? Akira rolled off the bed, striking a pose like a mystical guru. An air of profound mystery emanated from him, momentarily fooling his opponent. Aizen, however, quickly came to his senses, rubbing his forehead and sighing helplessly. He had a feeling that, under someone's influence, his path was veering towards some unpredictable abyss. In the dojo classroom, two figures faced off, gripping bamboo swords. Their auras clashed fiercely, a valiant killing intent spreading wildly. Or so Akira imagined. In reality, under Yuruoi's merciless pressure, he was already considering admitting his mistake. But he hesitated. He had worked hard to establish his persona as a great, handsome, and trustworthy shrine priest at the Shino Academy. If he admitted his error so easily, how would he deceive the gullible in the future? What about his sweet money? You little brat, Yuruoi growled, his forehead veins bulging. It's one thing to fool others normally, but this time you've gone too far. You've fooled Lord Sojin Kachiki. You don't seem to know how to write the word death. It's fortunate Lord Sojin didn't hold it against you, otherwise. He trailed off with a menacing humph. Akira frowned. That rich bastard is from the Kachiki family? Sojin Kachiki. Such a familiar name. Ignoring his muttering, Yuruoi raised his bamboo sword. His aura surged violently, forming an invisible whirlwind around him. Words are useless. I must teach you a profound lesson to make you remember your mistake. Be careful, Kisaragi. This time I, your teacher, won't show any mercy. His body sank slightly, his shoulders dropping as he suppressed his anger. The violent aura vanished momentarily. In the next instant, that withdrawn aura erupted. Yuruoi charged forward like a fierce tiger descending a mountain, his bamboo sword raised high. The sharp strike fell straight down, as if to cleave the very air in two. As the designated homeroom teacher for elite students, he was exceptional in Zanjutsu and Ho-Ho, despite his average Ryatsu. If not for his slightly lower Ryatsu, he would have been at least an officer-level Shinigami, rather than teaching full-time at the Shino Academy. Enormous pressure bore down as the flat bamboo sword transformed into a tiger's bloody maw. A faint roar seemed to echo, deafening to the ears. Akira drew in a sharp breath, instinctively raising his sword to defend. Whack! The loud impact plunged the dojo into silence, countless gazes focusing on the two. The other students were already used to Yuruoi beating Akira. But surprisingly, today their teacher seemed particularly serious. Even more surprising was that the famous shrine priest's performance seemed a bit above par. He actually blocked it. This Akira kid's Hakuta skills were already monstrous. And now his Zanjutsu is this strong too? No wonder my father warned me not to underestimate anyone. The Shino Academy truly is full of hidden talents. Aizen's expression remained calm, but his slightly flickering gaze revealed a hint of interest. Previously, Akira's Hakuta combat with Yoruchi wasn't enough to determine his talent. But if his Zanjutsu was as impressive as his hand-to-hand skills, then he could be certain that this friend of his was a genius just like himself. Yuruoi's attack was astonishing, his bamboo sword becoming a storm of strikes, weaving a net of heaven and earth, trapping Akira within. It seemed he could be utterly destroyed at any moment. Caught in the onslaught, Akira was in dire straits. His fraudulent teacher's battle experience was on a completely different level from Yoruchi's. The age difference meant that Yuruoi had been through more battles than the young woman had eaten meals. The method of learning and countering moves on the fly simply couldn't apply to the current scenario. He could only rely on his inherent combat skills to respond. He was now like a small boat on a turbulent sea, on the verge of total collapse at any moment. If he hadn't completed the check-in at Unohana's place and greatly increased his Zanjutsu level, He might have fallen in the first round of confrontation. But what he didn't know was that Yuroi was even more surprised at this moment. As a homeroom teacher, he was very familiar with the abilities of each student, even the often irritating Akira. His Hakuta skills had already given him quite a surprise. He didn't expect that in such a short time, this kid's Zanjutsu had also improved to another level. Is this what they call a genius? Thinking of this, Yuroi couldn't help but feel a bit more appreciative of talent. And then, he struck even harder. An untended sapling grows crooked. An undisciplined person becomes unruly. As an elite teacher, he must guide every genius back to the right path. This was his responsibility. The sudden increase in pressure made Akira suffer greatly. Gritting his teeth, he desperately sought a way to break the deadlock. Surrendering was out of the question. Even if he did, he'd still get beaten. His stinky teacher was just that straightforward. Realize your mistake, kid. Yuroi increased his force again, his footwork shifting, forcing Akira to retreat repeatedly until he was less than 3 meters from the wall. Go and repent for your mistakes properly, then get back on the right track. Roaring, he gripped the sword with both hands, swinging down with the force of splitting a mountain. A move without frills, just pure power and speed, and a tiny bit of Ryatsu. Akira held his breath, focusing intently. His heart of a god exerted itself to the utmost, his max-level talent instantly reaching its peak. The world in his eyes seemed to freeze. Yuroi's technique was dissected into dozens of parts in an instant. Power techniques, Ryatsu flow, strengths and weaknesses. Everything was grasped in the shortest time. Akira's eyes flickered with light, brilliant as the stars. There's no need to be stronger than you. Just a moment of carelessness, and I can seize the rhythm of victory. His fingers gripped tightly, the bamboo sword's handle emitting a creaking lament. All his strength focused on it, strands of bamboo fiber snapping and bursting. This strike, he blocked it. His legs slightly bent, arms crossed, blocking his ugly teacher's sure-kill strike in an odd posture. Looking at the young face so close, Yuroi's gaze suddenly froze. It seemed his teaching purpose had failed. Akira raised his head, grinning. Teacher, have you ever been defeated? An inexplicable sense of foreboding spread in Yuroi's heart. Before he could answer, Akira closed in, the bamboo sword sliding down askew, countless bamboo fibers completely bursting. Yuroi's eyes widened, his gaze revealing disbelief as a violent sound echoed in his ears. The broken bamboo sword fell directly on his chest. The next moment, he flew past countless shocked gazes to the end of the dojo, tracing a beautiful parabola before finally landing on the wooden door at the entrance. Boom! On this day, Akira's name resounded throughout the Shino Academy. In the classroom, the Shinigami teacher on the podium spoke animatedly, lecturing about the history of the Soul Society. From the glory of the royal family to the rise of the 5 noble houses, to the establishment of the Godai 13. He even mentioned the war between the Shinigami and the Quincy clan hundreds of years ago. Even to this day, Quincy still wandered in the world of the living. Below the podium, a rather peculiar scene unfolded. 99% of the students sat neatly at the front, attentively listening to the teacher's lecture. At the back of the classroom, however, several rows of seats were empty, with 2 slightly thin figures sitting at separate desks. One of them listened attentively, no different from the other students. The other had his head buried in the crook of his arm, seemingly in a state of hibernation. The teacher on the podium noticed this scene and, hesitating to speak, could only vent his pent-up frustration by raising his voice by several notches. However, this commotion was like a lullaby to Akira. When the strong and forceful voice reached his ears, he fell into an even deeper sleep. Aizen glanced sideways at his troublesome friend, a hint of helplessness flashing in his eyes. Perhaps this was a true portrayal of interest as the best teacher. Ever since Akira had sent Yuroi flying with 1 sword strike in the Zanjutsu class, his quality of life had been on a straight upward trajectory. Countless elite students, having witnessed his true strength, developed a deep-seated awe for him. No matter where, the strong are always respected. The Shino Academy was no exception. This news spread like wildfire, quickly circulating throughout the entire academy. Whether teachers, students, or even the principal, everyone knew that a true genius had emerged in Class 1A. In just a few months since entering the academy, he was already capable of overwhelming teachers, and his Ryatsu even surpassed that of an average Shinigami squad member. An undisputed genius, Akira Kisaragi. Yet this guy didn't play by the rules at all. Although he chose to listen attentively in classes like Zanjutsu, Hakuda, Ho-Ho, and even practical combat courses, when it came to cultural classes, he would start snoring away, showing not a hint of the pride or attitude a genius should have. He spent his days fooling around, occasionally coming up with unexpected ideas. These included night raids on the Shino Academy cafeteria, tampering with disciplinary notices, or offering to exorcise and consecrate female classmates, and so on. The key was that if he were doing these things alone, it would be fine. But every time he prepared to cause mischief, he would drag along his friend. In Akira's words, good brothers should share in the joys, while you alone bear the hardships. Although it's unclear where he heard such a twisted saying, he always strictly adhered to it. That's all for today's lesson. The history teacher announced from the podium, his expression serious. The genius and handsome pupil stirred from his slumber. Is class over? Akira mumbled, bleary-eyed and disoriented. Our final exams are in a month. The teacher continued, although practical skills are the most important course for Shinigami, cultural classes cannot be neglected either. For this exam, any student who fails to pass will be given a major demerit of probation. At the word demerit, Akira suddenly perked up, turning to look pitifully at Aizen beside him. So Suke, we're good brothers, right? Aizen remained silent. You surely can't bear to see me fail the exam, right? You see, during the exam, Akira had somehow slid next to Aizen, familiarly draping himself over the other's shoulder, already brainstorming his usual mischievous ideas. The next class is Jinzen, Aizen said, standing up from his seat. You should first think about how to complete the most basic meditation. If I remember correctly, as of last night, you still couldn't complete the first step of Sword Zen. Failing cultural classes is one thing, but if you can't obtain your own Zanpakuto, even if you graduate smoothly, you won't be able to join the Godai 13. Perhaps your only choice will be the Kido Corps. Akira was stunned, his good brother's sudden backstab leaving him momentarily heartbroken. But at this point, he could only grit his teeth and push on. Although he wasn't sure of the exact reason, it seemed he was naturally incompatible with his Zanpakuto. From the initial choice of Asachi to the current understanding of Jinzen, even the worst students could vaguely sense the power of their swords. Yet he couldn't even complete the most basic Sword Zen, let alone unleash the power of his Zanpakuto. Wasn't it said that Zanpakuto were forged based on a Shinigami soul? So why was he naturally incompatible with his own soul? Could it be that he was just purely stubborn or dumb? With hearts filled with trepidation and doubt, Akira and Aizen arrived at the Jinzen dojo. The spacious room exuded a zen-like tranquility. A faint fragrance lingered in the air, inducing a dreamy state that made one feel as if floating on clouds. This was the special Reisher incense of the Jinzen dojo, used to help new Zanpakuto wielders enter the state of Sword Zen more quickly, facilitating smooth communication with their swords. Of course, this Reisher incense had little effect on those with strong willpower, like Akira and Aizen. The two sat cross-legged on cushions, assuming meditative postures, and began their meditation. Like the other students around them, Aizen quickly entered the state of Jinzen. Only Akira fidgeted, scratching his ears and face as if covered in lice. He couldn't understand why. Even though he had followed the teacher's instructions and received Aizen's guidance, he still couldn't complete the most basic Sword Zen. He stared blankly at the blade placed neatly across his knees. The shape, abilities, and state of a Zanpakuto are all forged based on the Shinigami's soul. Shinigami gain power by knowing the name given to their Zanpakuto and engaging in spiritual dialogue with it. To be precise, the blade before him now couldn't be called a Zanpakuto, but rather an Asachi. Shinigami need to live and breathe with their Asachi, constantly honing it, imprinting the essence of their soul into it, thus creating their own Zanpakuto. However, Akira understood the theory. The problem was how to imprint the essence of his soul into the Zanpakuto. It was like knowing that beyond the door lay the Shino Academy cafeteria and women's dormitory. If he could just open the door and walk in, he could enjoy endless happiness. But how to open the door? Author's note: the FBI knows how. They always know. The conventional methods of Jinzen were completely ineffective for him. He folded his arms, furrowing his brow as he stared at his Asachi, countless thoughts flashing through his mind. Damn, even Mimahagi isn't as hard to communicate with as you, Akira muttered angrily. But just then, A flash of inspiration struck him like lightning. Wait a minute. What if I try to communicate with the Zanpakuto using the method for communicating with deities? With this thought, his gaze towards the blade on his knees filled with fiery enthusiasm. Zanpakuto, Soul Slayer Jinzen, Sword Zen or Sword Meditation Asachi. Nameless Zanpakuto, there are 3 ways to communicate with the divine: blessing, prayer, and ritual. Unlike the Ayase family of shrine priests, the Sakahon Shrine, due to its small size and remote location, has limited methods for divine communication. Akira knew only these 3 methods, with prayer and ritual being the most common. Nanao had taught him the specific techniques. Having made his decision, he stood up abruptly. Disregarding the Jinzen class teacher's puzzled look, he left the dojo carrying his asachi. As he disappeared, Aizen's half-closed eyes opened. Confusion flashed across his face. What's he up to now? Given his friend's penchant for the inconceivable and unreasonable, occasional truancy was hardly surprising. This kid is becoming more and more unruly, the Jinzen teacher muttered, watching Akira leave. He wanted to intervene, but, mindful of their difference in combat skills, held his tongue. After all, this troublesome student wasn't wielding a bamboo sword. It was a real asachi. Though not yet imbued with soul essence to become a true Zanpakuto, its durability and sharpness far surpassed a bamboo sword. If that reckless youth lost control, he, a mere Jinzen teacher, could end up at the blade's mercy. For his own safety, discretion seemed the better part of valor. "Teacher, I'll go bring him back," Aizen said after a moment's hesitation, curious to see what Akira was planning. Having obtained the teacher's permission, he quickly left the dojo as well. Following Akira's Ryatsu trail, he chased him all the way to the dormitory area. The scene that unfolded there once again challenged his worldview and understanding of this unpredictable realm. He watched as his friend meticulously arranged talismans across the table, with candles burning, creating an eerie yet sacred atmosphere. A large black eye was engraved on a nearby banner, and a bronze bell swayed, emitting crisp metallic chimes. Carefully, Akira placed his asachi in the position typically reserved for enshrining deities. Under Aizen's puzzled gaze, the usually sunny and carefree Akira transformed. He became serious and solemn, his whole demeanor exuding a powerful mystical quality. Just like a true shrine priest. This guy, Aizen mused, could he be attempting to complete Jinzen through a ritual method, to communicate with his own Zanpakuto? Clever as he was, he quickly grasped the essence of Akira's plan just by observing the preparation stage. His understanding stemmed not just from knowledge, but from his familiarity with the shrine priest. Due to Akira's unconventional ways, Aizen remained his sole friend at the Shin'o Academy. But wasn't Aizen in a similar position? Who would dare to casually mess with someone associated with Akira? Even Yurui, a teacher, had already secured a private room in the infirmary. Others were even more hesitant to get involved with this enigmatic and reserved student. In the name of the shrine priest, Akira, I perform this ritual. Akira's fingers fluttered like butterflies, forming intricate yet sacred hand seals. As he chanted, he focused his mind on the object of the ritual. What should the image of a Zanpakuto be? A simple sword? Countless images surged through his mind, only to be swiftly discarded. Though uncertain if this method would work, Akira knew he couldn't simply bluff his way through by imagining a Zanpakuto in his mind. Suddenly, a revelation about Zanpakuto flashed through his thoughts. Since it was essentially constructed from a Shinigami's soul, could he change the object of the ritual to himself? To communicate and dialogue with his own essence? His eyes brightened, reflecting the flickering candlelight as if brilliant stars were slowly forming within them. Having determined the object of the ritual, he used the asachi as a medium to proceed with the ceremony. As the bronze bell swayed, a sudden gust of wind arose in the room, lifting countless objects into the air. They collided, emitting sounds of shattering. Akira poured all his Ryatsu into the bell, using this method to awaken the deity he needed to communicate with. In the midst of this, an invisible thread seemed to connect his soul to the asachi. Seeing this, Aizen's eyes widened, his usually calm, somewhat childish face now replaced with an expression of disbelief and shock. It actually succeeded. Using a ritual method to replace Jinzen, he had completed the communication between a Shinigami and their Zanpakuto. How on earth does this guy's brain work? Aizen thought, to come up with such an outrageous method. Surge double explode. The moment his soul connected with the Asachi, Akira's Ryatsu began to rise violently, forming a tangible pressure that covered the entire dormitory room. Had he any spare attention, he would have noticed. The data on his personal status panel was changing rapidly. Ryatsu. Level 20, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. The numbers kept soaring, as if there was no upper limit. Compared to the changes on the status panel, the impact of his Ryatsu on the surroundings was even more shocking. The wooden floor cracked layer by layer, the wallpaper and walls torn apart by the wind, swirling into the chaotic gale. Scattered objects collided and were ground to dust. What was even more perplexing was that the loudest sound in the room wasn't the howling of the wind, but the muffled impacts coming from his body. It was the beating of his heart. It was as if thunder from the sky had fallen into his chest cavity, pounding and resonating, seeming as though it would burst his chest open. Aizen's expression changed repeatedly. Indeed, not following the usual path would lead to completely different results. Akira, who never followed the beaten track, had directly arrived at an unfamiliar situation. Even for someone like Aizen, who had perfect scores in history class, he had never heard of anyone experiencing such a shocking change after communicating with their Zanpakuto. The Ryatsu continued to rise. From the level of a standard Shinigami division member, it soared all the way to the level of a seated officer. Ryatsu, level 45, rank 12 spirit class, looking at Akira, his eyes were now completely white, his expression dazed and blank, like a wooden statue. His consciousness, however, had arrived in a completely unfamiliar space. To be more precise, it should be called a world. Check-in conditions met. Location check-in. Zanpakuto Inner World. Obtained Ryatsu level +1. Ryatsu level increased. Currently at level 46. Obtained exclusive trait. Light as a feather. Light as a feather. Body becomes nimble, speed increased by 50%. A familiar voice echoed in his ears. Gazing at the boundless world before him, Akira felt confidence surging through his heart. Indeed, when it came to rituals, he was a professional. Initially planning to use EXP, he later deemed this setting too cumbersome and simply decided to increase levels directly. Aizen surveyed the scene, uncertain of what exactly had transpired with Akira. However, one thing was clear. If he didn't soon return from his sacrificial state, the entire Shino Academy men's dormitory would be uprooted. A heavy heartbeat, like rumbling thunder, synchronized with the earth's pulse. Fierce winds howled, walls trembled and crumbled. It was as if the earth itself was turning over. Heavy Ryatsu erupted layer by layer, reminiscent of magma bursting from the earth's crust. Endless waves of heat rolled within the hurricane, engulfing everything around. Within seconds, Akira's room had been completely destroyed, leaving only a few intact wooden boards. The destructive force showed no signs of stopping, expanding like a hurricane to envelop the entire men's dormitory area. The violent commotion quickly drew the attention of students and teachers. Shinigami stationed at the Shino Academy arrived immediately, all staring in shock at the students standing at the hurricane's center. Despite their limited understanding, they attempted to approach Akira, trying to awaken the dazed young man. As they crossed the shattered floor, another extremely heavy Ryatsu suddenly bore down on them. Boom! The thick Ryatsu crashed down, causing the earth to tremble under its unbearable weight. With each attempt to approach, the resistance grew more enormous, as if the air itself had become increasingly viscous. What on earth is happening to this kid? One Shinigami gritted out, such immense Ryatsu. Even a lieutenant might not match it, right? Damn it, we can't get close. Let's evacuate the nearby students before any casualties occur. The station Shinigami suddenly realized that when they moved away from Akira, the pressure on their bodies abruptly lightened, as if it had never existed. On edge, they didn't think too deeply and pinned all the anomalies and problems on this strange student. After all, the culprit responsible for the current scene was standing right there. Taking on a bit more blame seemed only natural. From the shadows, Aizen observed the squad member's departure, his face a mask of calm indifference. His earlier intervention served a single purpose: to prevent these impulsive individuals from meddling with Akira. Nothing more. His penetrating gaze returned to the hurricane's epicenter, eyes brimming with intrigue. Communicating with Asachi through a sacrifice ritual, imprinting the soul's essence, forging the nascent Zanpakuto. Your approach is unparalleled. Fascinating. Aizen realized with sudden clarity that his initial greeting at enrollment had not been misplaced after all. In the vast, empty world, Akira found himself staring blankly at his surroundings. Is this my Zanpakuto's inner world? Drawing from his understanding of Zanpakuto and his experience watching anime in his previous life, he expected someone resembling him to appear. This doppelganger would claim to be his Zanpakuto and ramble about kings and steeds. Ultimately explaining their difference was instinct. So Akira waited, anticipating the arrival of this character. After several minutes of foolishly squatting in place, he realized the danger of relying too heavily on past experiences. Looks like the Zanpakuto isn't coming, he muttered, standing up and scanning his surroundings. Are other people's Zanpakuto inner worlds as abstract as mine? As his gaze wandered, a familiar scene came into view. A place he had called home for several years. Memories flooded back. Being beaten bloody over a bit of water, fighting vicious wild dogs for a rotten fried fish. This was the 76th district of East Rukongai Sakahon. Rukongai comprised 4 main sections: East, South, West, and North, each divided into 80 districts, totaling 320. As the district numbers increased, so did the harshness of the environment. The 80th district was often barren and famine-stricken, with souls battling for survival. Sakahon, ranked just before it, was scarcely better. Akira had struggled there for a long time before reaching his turning point. He remembered it vividly. That day, Nanao's smile was as beautiful as a flower. Walking slowly along the familiar path, his eyes fell upon a solemn and magnificent shrine. Quickening his pace to confirm his suspicions, he entered. Inside, instead of the familiar statue of the one-eyed great deity, he encountered a figure both strange and familiar. A statue that looked exactly like him. "I've been enshrined as a deity?" He gasped, bewildered. Even with his intelligence, he struggled to comprehend the scene before him. Could it be that when he communicated with Asachi through sacrificial methods, the essence of his Zanpakuto had already changed? As Akira tried to make sense of the situation and reached out to touch the statue, the entire world began to collapse. With a moment of dizziness, Akira returned to the Shino Academy. His eyes met a pair filled with countless bloodshot veins. He instinctively stepped back, suddenly realizing that below those eyes was an extremely haggard and pale face. "Teacher Yuroi? Ah, you're still alive. That's great," Yuroi said expressionlessly, his words as lifeless as a dried-up corpse. "Now it's time to calculate the bill." Akira's heart skipped a beat. The entire men's dormitory was shattered by the commotion you caused. Not counting the damaged land, just the buildings alone amount to a loss of 389,654 Laotian kips. Considering you're a student, I'll round off the small change. Let's make it 390,000 Laotian kips. 390,000 Laotian kips. You might as well kill me. Akira's eyes widened in disbelief. And rounding up? You old fox, were you a swindler in your past life? Yuroi understood his meaning, but this kid had tormented him to the point of physical and mental collapse recently. He had no desire to explain further. The loss is what it is. If you have any questions, you can discuss it with the headmaster. He sighed. Also, let me tell you one more thing. The headmaster is temporarily away on a mission, so the captain commander is taking over the position for now. After all, he founded the Shino Academy. He wouldn't be at ease if just anyone was put in charge of managing it. So, that's all I have to say. You'd better take care of yourself. Yuroi sighed long and deep once again, his figure hunched as he walked away. Akira took a deep breath, his gaze falling on a certain shadow in the ruins. The person hiding in the shadows felt their hearts skip a beat. However, before they could react, a familiar wail echoed throughout the ruins. "Sosuke, save me." Emerging from the shadows, Aizen felt a headache coming on as countless eyes focused on him. He disliked this kind of attention, otherwise he wouldn't have hidden his true strength. But when you're stuck with a troublemaker like Akira, such trivial wishes become nothing but a luxury. Suddenly, he began to regret the greeting he had given when he first entered the academy. If only he had a choice. "Sosuke, you can't just leave me to die." Akira rushed to his side, wailing, 390,000 Laotian kips. "That old geezer Yuroi just wants me dead. You're so smart, you must have a way out of this, right?" Aizen's gaze was calm, his expression serene as he softly replied, "Actually, you already have a suitable plan in mind, don't you?" If the future Aizen possessed the most penetrating gaze into the human heart, then the current version of him already had the makings of his future self. Perhaps he couldn't perfectly control people's hearts yet, but understanding someone wasn't a difficult task for him. After spending so much time with this shrine priest, if he still couldn't figure out what kind of person he was dealing with, then he wouldn't deserve to be called Aizen. Akira was a bit surprised. How did you know I was planning to fleece some rich fool? Aizen fell silent. He suddenly realized that perhaps he didn't understand him as well as he thought he did. Hee. Although 390,000 Laotian kips is a lot, it's not like there's absolutely no way out. Akira casually draped his arm over Aizen's shoulders, their posture bringing to mind a particular idiom. Partners in crime. I've asked around. That rich fool who bought the talisman is the sole heir of the Kachiki family, the richest of the rich. Akira explained, his mood swings so rapid that even Aizen couldn't help but marvel. Because of his gentle and kind nature, he's known as the nice guy of the Kachiki family. Few nobles are as approachable as him. You just need to cooperate with me like this. He rambled on endlessly, his expression extremely excited, just like when he had slashed Yhwach with one stroke. However, the joys and sorrows between people are not always shared, and Aizen only found him noisy. He knew that once this guy discovered him, nothing good would come of it. Well, now he'd become an accomplice. Their conversation wasn't overheard by others, as the passing Shinigami were preoccupied with how to rebuild the men's dormitory of the Shino Academy in the shortest possible time. They couldn't let the students sleep in the ruins, could they? That day, the Research and Development Group from the 12th Division entered the Shino Academy, led by a beautiful woman named Shutara Senjimaru. Under her command, a series of colorful fabric-woven house-like structures rose from the cleared areas, serving as temporary dormitories. The students were thus spared from having to sleep outdoors. Upon learning that Akira was the culprit, some courageous students challenged him to duels. After deliberation, dozens of elite 6th-year students, under the supervision of Station Shinigami, officially began a Hakuda duel. The Shino Academy, serving as a reserve for Shinigami, was no stranger to hot-blooded ruffians and hotheads who'd come to blows at the slightest provocation. To prevent frequent injuries and deaths from private fights, the captain commander had established dueling rules when founding the academy. These rules were comprehensive. Intentional killing was forbidden. Duels required supervision by Shinigami officers or teachers. Underhanded tactics were prohibited. Elite students couldn't refuse duel challenges, and ordinary students couldn't challenge elite students at will, among other stipulations. Given Akira's astonishing Zanjutsu skills, which had sent teacher Yhwach flying with a single slash, the students seeking revenge wisely chose challenge him in Hakuda combat. Naturally, Akira wouldn't refuse. When his consciousness returned from his Zanpakuto's inner world, he immediately noticed changes in himself. First was a surge in his Ryatsu. Second was a sense of fullness in his spiritual body and soul, an overflow of Reisher. It felt as if a balloon full of air had suddenly been filled with water. This strange sensation left him momentarily bewildered. Yet with these punching bags delivering themselves to his doorstep, how could he refuse his classmates' kind offer? A Kido barrier expanded, forming a large oval that enclosed both Akira and his challenger. The student challenging him was Takeo Matsushita, a towering, robust figure with hands as large as palm leaf fans and a face so meaty he looked more hollow than Shinigami. As an elite among the 6th-year students, Takeo was renowned in the Shino Academy for his Hakuda expertise. He had already secured his future division placement before graduation. Moreover, during a practical training mission, he had once defeated a hollow with the strength of a formal Shinigami in direct Hakuda combat. One must face the consequences of their actions. His voice rumbled like thunder, deep and heavy, his mere presence exuding an oppressive aura. Cut the crap. Fight if you're going to fight. If not, then scram. Akira grinned. Or are you scared? Takeo's rage swelled, his bulging muscles quivering, his already exaggerated physique expanding even further. Scared. Impossible. He was Takeo Matsushita, the man destined to become the strongest Shinigami captain. How dare this insignificant worm provoke him? Very well. You're the first to anger me before a duel. He raised his iron-like arm, pointing at Akira. You'll pay dearly for this. With the pre-fight banter concluded, the referee signaled to start. Takeo flexed his muscles and charged like an enraged bull. The ground trembled, dust clouds rising as his enormous, fan-like hand reached to grab. As his fingers closed, the air seemed to wail. Unlike Yuruchi's agile and varied Hakuta techniques, Takeo's moves were grand and straightforward, no frills. He leveraged his massive frame to full advantage, immovable as a mountain when still, devastating as an avalanche in motion. The Kido barrier's limited space left little room for evasion. Akira had no choice but to confront him head-on. Seemingly reckless, Takeo had actually calculated everything from the battle's start. Victory in this duel would surely be his. Foolish brat, pay for your actions. However, as his palm leaf fan-sized hand was about to land, Takeo, staring at the emotionless Akira, felt an inexplicable chill in his heart. Why isn't this kid dodging? Facing the looming shadow up close, Akira grinned. His fingers lightly stroked the air like plucking guitar strings, then suddenly clenched into a fist. With light footsteps, he stepped forward. Then, his relatively slender fist, accompanied by a sharp sound slicing through the air, erupted with a surge of energy, striking straight ahead. Boom! A hurricane erupted, howling and surging. The violent impact exploded in front of Akira, transforming into chaotic air currents that struck in all directions. Takeo's heavy punch missed, leaving his front wide open. Akira seized the opportunity, landing a direct thrust punch on his robust chest. There wasn't a hint of Ryatsu released. It was purely physical strength, or what's known as Riryoku spiritual power. The world of Shinigami is strange. The souls of those who die in the living world separate from their physical bodies and come to the Soul Society. But if you think the souls in the Soul Society are purely spiritual, you'd be greatly mistaken. Most things in the Soul Society are composed of Reisha, spirit particles, while most things in the living world are composed of matter particles. When souls arrive in the Soul Society, their bodies are reconstructed from Reisha. In other words, whether commoners or nobles, their main components are Reisha and souls. When not using Ryatsu to fight, the strength, or Riryoku, contained within the spiritual body becomes the key to determining the outcome of a battle. Takeo felt as if he'd been hit head-on by a charging rhinoceros. The violent force contained in Akira's fist was not inferior to his own, and might even slightly exceed it. In an instant, his eyeballs bulged, filled with countless blood vessels, adding a peculiar color to his eyes. His thick, massive feet firmly planted on the ground, plowing 2 deep furrows under the enormous force pushing against him. Cough, that's quite some strength. Takeo wiped away the blood trickling from the corner of his mouth, then raised his hand and tore off his blue and white school uniform, revealing his towering physique. An intense, oppressive aura, like that of a giant beast, swept over everyone. However, I'm the man who's going to become a captain. His roar was like thunder, echoing throughout the entire battlefield, moving people with his demeanor. In contrast, Akira on the opposite side wore a bewildered expression, staring at his right fist in confusion, as if it were his first time in a fight, completely unable to understand the situation. This contemptuous attitude immediately angered Takeo's friends, with cheers and curses coming from all around, creating a cacophony. Aizen calmly gazed at the figure within the Kido barrier, a thoughtful emotion flashing in his eyes. He didn't understand. Why had Akira undergone such a dramatic change after communicating with Asachi? Not only had his Ryatsu doubled, but his spiritual body seemed to have become more compact. The power contained within him had increased several-fold, far surpassing his previous capabilities. What exactly had happened? Akira was also pondering this question. However, with his limited knowledge and seemingly empty brain, he simply couldn't fathom what had occurred, even though these changes came from within himself. Forget it, I'm done thinking. He gave up on further taxing his brain cells. Clapping his hands together, he waved at Takeo across from him. Come on, big guy, let's continue. Takeo's breath escaped in 2 thick streams of white vapor, his entire being reminiscent of an enraged bull. Division member-level Ryatsu enveloped his body, enhancing his already formidable strength. With a violent stomp of his massive foot, Takeo's towering, muscular frame became a human cannonball, hurtling straight towards Akira. His right arm bent forward, launching an elbow strike and a crushing overhead attack towards his shorter opponent. His momentum was fierce and powerful, seemingly unstoppable. He had pushed his advantages to the extreme. This strike would be his strongest attack yet, watching the massive black shadow charging towards him. Akira didn't meet it head-on like before. Instead, just as Takeo gathered his strength, he stepped back, his legs slightly bent. Then, to everyone's astonishment, he leapt into the air, perfectly evading his opponent's vicious elbow strike. Takeo looked up, his gaze fierce and his expression savage, immediately attempting to attack the airborne figure that couldn't change direction. The explosive power hidden in his tall frame, combined with his abnormally long arms, would allow him to easily reach a height of several meters. However, Akira didn't give him this opportunity. As he soared through the air, his excited voice rang out. "Eat my Tenrin Gesso, Celestial Crescent Sweep." Takeo's eyes widened. He hadn't clearly heard what he had shouted. The intense pressure suddenly reminded him of his first encounter with a hollow, a terrifying body several times larger than his own, reeking of blood, savage and ferocious. It was suffocating. Instinctively, he crossed his arms in front of him, attempting to block Akira's attack. The next moment, crack, boom, a meteor fell. Fierce winds rose from the ground, kicking up countless clouds of dust like lava erupting from a volcano. Shockwaves radiated in all directions from the violent impact. Takeo's arms shattered upon impact, showing irregular, abnormal bruising. His towering frame crashed down, smashing a huge crater into the ground. As the dust settled, silence fell. Shock, astonishment, disbelief, incomprehension. Such expressions flashed across the faces of the onlookers. Aizen sighed, rubbing his forehead, a hint of helplessness in his eyes. It seemed things were once again developing beyond his control. Who's next? As Akira gradually became familiar with his suddenly increased power, his confidence soared to unprecedented heights. Everyone here, without exception, was trash. Meanwhile, on a building north of the dual barrier, two figures, one tall, one short, stood by the railing, observing the scene. "He's quite energetic, isn't he?" The speaker was a bald old man with a graying beard hanging down his front. His long white eyelashes drooped to his gaunt cheekbones, and his bearing was calm and dignified, imposing without anger. Is this the Akira who destroyed the men's dormitory at the Shino Academy? Beside him, a white-haired, golden-eyed man who looked like a gentleman bowed his head respectfully. "Yes, Captain Commander. Akira Kisaragi is from District 76 of East Rakongai, Sakahone, and is the priest of the local shrine." The dignified old man lowered his gaze to the young figure in the Keto barrier, his half-closed eyes masking his emotions. "The Shino Academy is flourishing. Jinrei Kachiki has done well. Whether it's Takeo Matsushita or Akira Kisaragi, they will both become part of the Godai 13 in the near future, defending the justice of Soul Society. Geniuses should be treated differently." Chojiro Sasaki furrowed his brow slightly, not quite grasping the Captain Commander's meaning. Just as he was about to inquire, the old man beside him spoke again. "True geniuses cannot be nurtured in a greenhouse. Experiencing cruelty in advance might be more beneficial for their growth." Night had fallen. Moonlight cascaded like water, its cool rays bathing the colorful buildings and reflecting a unique, beautiful palette. Everyone returned to their temporary dormitories, minds reeling with shock and disbelief after witnessing the battle. This was destined to be a sleepless night. Initially, they had thought Akira's victory over Yuroi was just a fluke. But when he displayed his extreme violence under countless gazes, everything changed. Only then did the teachers and students of the Shino Academy realize they were dealing with an absolute monster. Be it Ryatsu or combat techniques, among the students of the same generation, there was simply no one who could face him head-on. Take the tough-skinned Takeo, for instance. Struck by Akira's aerial flying kick, he suffered fractured arms and a collapsed chest cavity. On the spot, he could barely draw breath. The stationed Shinigami immediately called a stop to the duel, rushing Takeo to the infirmary at top speed, then directly transferring him to the 4th Division's coordinated relief station. While the Academy's teachers and students puzzled over his immense strength, they also began to ponder another question. What on earth is this celestial crescent sweep? In the temporary dormitory, Aizen furrowed his brows, perplexed. From his perspective, the Hakuda techniques Akira had just used in battle differed from those taught at the Shino Academy. "Well, of course it's my own creation." Akira grinned, boasting shamelessly. "A genius like me picked up quite a few skills during my previous duel with Yoruchi. The Shohoin family's exclusive techniques, with just a bit of tweaking, become my own." He chose not to conceal it. Or rather, in front of Aizen, there was no need to hide such a trivial secret. As they spent more time together, Akira discovered that he wasn't as ambitious, cruel, or cold as he had imagined. Even viewing him through colored glasses, the impression remained the same. The current Aizen, aside from his strong curiosity, seemed little different from other students. Even in terms of talent, he appeared somewhat ordinary. Compared to Akira's recent brilliant performances, he seemed more like an ordinary sidekick. No exceptional talent, no notable background. While he might excel compared to ordinary people, in the talent-filled Shino Academy, he appeared somewhat commonplace. As for his personality, gentle, friendly, cautious, and careful, he rarely refused requests from friends. Even someone like this shrine priest could get along well with him. Perhaps this was Aizen's true face. Akira had once struggled to survive in the Sakahon district, witnessing countless facets of human nature. If the academy was the human world, then Sakahon was naked hell. He dared not claim to fully comprehend human nature, but at least the danger instinct never lies. Due to time constraints, the temporary dormitory was a 4-person room. Unsurprisingly, Aizen and Akira were assigned to the same room. The other 2 roommates, upon learning that the famous and amiable shrine priest was also there, promptly chose to move out. Thus, only the 2 young men remained in the dormitory. After he explained the principle of celestial crescent sweep to him, Aizen's gaze towards his friend held a few more traces of surprise. Previously, when Akira had engaged in a Hakuda duel with Yoruchi, he thought he was merely imitating her techniques in a short time. Now he realized he had underestimated his friend. Akira could instantly master techniques just by experiencing them firsthand. Such talent even surpassed Aizen's own. You want to learn, huh? I'll teach you. Without waiting for Aizen to speak, Akira began an unreserved explanation on the cloth-woven floor, showing off. Actually, Yoruchi's techniques aren't that difficult. She deliberately slowed down her speed. By analyzing the movements from the left lower leg and the right side of the waist, you can completely deconstruct the entire technique. Aizen had wanted to refuse, but seeing his enthusiasm, he didn't want to dampen his spirits. However, as he listened attentively, he narrowed his eyes slightly. The explanation was surprisingly accurate to the finest detail. Akira, you female-obsessed priest, is this your true face? After listening to the explanation, Aizen nodded thoughtfully and said in a clear voice, Actually, I have another question. Akira rubbed his chin and raised an eyebrow. Is there something else you don't understand? No. Aizen shook his head. I want to ask about today's disturbance. What exactly did you do? He had witnessed the entire process of Akira communicating with his Asachi. Yet even with his knowledge and thinking, he still couldn't understand what had happened to him. Driven by curiosity, he chose to ask directly. The young man sitting on the opposite bed furrowed his brows upon hearing this question. Is it inconvenient to answer? Aizen's gaze lowered slightly, but he didn't voice his thoughts. For Shinigami, the Zanpakuto relates to everything about oneself, and not sharing it with others is quite reasonable. Even for him, it's the same. In this world, surely no one would be foolish enough to easily reveal their Zanpakuto-esque abilities to others? He wasn't surprised by Akira's reaction. Although the two had been inseparable during this time and appeared to be very good friends in others' eyes, in terms of trust, perhaps they hadn't reached the point of complete openness. To tell you the truth, Akira suddenly spoke, his brows still furrowed. I'm not clear about what exactly happened either. When I communicated with my Asachi through the method of sacrifice, my consciousness successfully entered the Zanpakuto-esque inner world. Then I returned to the most familiar place in my memory, the Sakahon district of Rakongai. And in the shrine where I worked, in the place where the statue of Mimahagi should have been, my own stone statue was placed instead. Then my consciousness returned. He calmly narrated all of this without concealment. In his view, this hardly counted as a secret. Compared to the absurd notion of gaining cheat abilities, the mystery of a Zanpakuto seemed rather insignificant. Moreover, he genuinely didn't understand what had happened to him. Rather than puzzling over it alone, it made more sense to confide in Aizen. Given his friend's insatiable curiosity, Akira knew he'd likely be intrigued. Aizen gazed at the young man before him with astonishment, experiencing trust from another person for the first time. He couldn't quite articulate his current thoughts, but a subtle feeling stirred within him. Perhaps, He mused, his lips curling slightly. To unravel what exactly happened to you, we should start by investigating the Sakahon shrine. Late into the night, the two engaged in a lengthy discussion. They still couldn't pinpoint exactly what had happened to Akira. However, one thing was undeniable. He had become dozens of times stronger since completing his unique Jinzen. The sudden surge in Ryatsu alone would qualify him for immediate graduation and even an officer position in the Godai 13. Furthermore, the changes in his spiritual body, specifically the increase in Ryuryoku, enabled him to wield combat power far exceeding his current Ryatsu level. Author's note, a brief explanation. Ryuryoku is the amount of energy, while Ryatsu is this energy in use, exerting pressure and representing the quality of spiritual energy. Thus, Akira now possesses abundant spiritual energy, but it will take time for its quality to match its quantity. Unable to grasp it all at once, Akira abandoned this brain-taxing endeavor and instead began to assess his recent growth in strength. He sprawled on the bed, eyes fixed on the vibrant cloth ceiling, and with a mere thought, his personal status panel materialized. Name, Akira Kisaragi. Identity, Sakahon Shrine Head Priest, Rukongai Commoner, Shino Academy First-Year Student, Ryatsu. Level 46, Rank 12 Spirit Class, Zanjutsu. Level 32, Hakuda. Level 21, Ho-Ho. Level 20, Kido. Level 23, Exclusive Trait. Racial Affinity, Danger Instinct, Heart of a God, Miraculous Healing, Light as a Feather. Compared to its simplicity when he first entered the academy, his personal status panel now looked far more impressive. Not only had his Ryatsu skyrocketed, but even his basic combat skills, Zanjutsu, Hakuda, Ho-Ho, and Kido, had improved significantly. While occasional lucky daily and monthly check-in rewards contributed, most of his progress stemmed from his own diligence and consistent practice. Akira's talent wasn't bad to begin with. His unique trait, Heart of a God, maximized his aptitude, while Racial Affinity enhanced his Ryuryoku and Ryatsu cultivation. If he persevered, he'd undoubtedly become a captain-class powerhouse in the future. Of course, he wouldn't stop there. Though uncertain about later developments in the Bleach world, he knew that even captain-class powerhouses were mere cannon fodder in the early stages. At best, slightly tougher cannon fodder. Looks like I don't have any major weaknesses, Akira mused, stroking his chin. I wonder how I stack up against Sosuke. From what I've seen, he seems pretty average. His Zanjutsu, Hakuda, Ho-Ho, and Kido are middle of the pack in our class, and his Ryatsu is nothing special. This level of strength doesn't do justice to his future badass status. While Akira analyzed his progress, Aizen lay on the opposite bed, hands crossed, gaze fixed on the ceiling. Countless thoughts raced through his mind as he compared, speculated, and gathered evidence, continuously cross-referencing various possibilities. Curiosity drove him to seek the true answer to the question. However, just as his mental faculties were operating at full speed, a muffled rumbling broke the dormitory's silence. Gurgle, gurgle, gurgle. A mischievous voice quickly followed. Hihi, Sosuke, what do you think? At this hour, the chefs at the academy cafeteria should be asleep, right? The next day, at the academy cafeteria, Akira listlessly played with the rice ball in front of him, his gaze mournfully fixed on the pickled cucumber beside it. At this moment, he felt that life was meaningless, and death was the ultimate destination for all living beings. Aizen, carrying his tray, sat opposite him. The sweet aroma of plum soup and the rich smell of meat cutlet immediately caught someone's attention. Even though you owe the academy 390,000 Laotian kips, it shouldn't be this bad, right? Glancing at the half-dead priest, he sighed lightly, once again realizing he couldn't align his thought process with this guy's. Besides, even if you try to save money this way, it won't make much difference. Hearing this, Akira lifted his head from the plum soup and meat cutlet, his face expressionless. You're right. Although I'm still just a first-year student at the Shino Academy, my current assets are enough to ensure I'm well-fed and clothed for the rest of my life. Isn't it unbelievable? At my age, I've reached this point where I can eat whatever I want, buy whatever I want. If I were to die tomorrow, Aizen shook his head and sighed, then gracefully began his meal, completely ignoring the increasingly sorrowful gaze of his friend across the table. He knew very well that Akira was only pretending to be pitiful. Last night, after their conversation ended, this guy had dragged him along to sneak into the academy cafeteria. After instructing him to keep watch, he had entered a gluttonous state, his eating method too gruesome to watch. The reason this guy only took 2 rice balls and a small dish of pickled cucumbers wasn't to save money, but simply because he was too full to eat anymore. As a Shinigami with high Ryatsu, Aizen, who was still in his growth stage, couldn't maintain his life with just a small amount of water intake like the ordinary residents of Rakongai. Moreover, due to his high Ryoryoku, he often needed to consume more food than the average Shinigami. Akira was a similar case. Forcing down his nausea and adhering to the principle of never wasting food, he finished the rice balls and pickled cucumbers. Then the two of them headed to today's class together. East Rakongai, 64th District, Sabetsura. Violent and chaotic Ryatsu collided furiously, an intense atmosphere permeating the air. Deafening battle cries shattered the century-long silence of this plain. Over 100 Shinigami engaged in fierce combat. Their eyes were bloodshot, filled with countless red veins, as if they had gone berserk. Though their individual strength was no more than that of ordinary squad members, the scale of their battle surpassed that of some lower-ranked officers. Kido spells exploded continuously. Scorching flames burned wildly amidst the rolling dust, and piercing cries of anguish seemed particularly insignificant on this battlefield. Among the battling factions, one figure slightly shorter than the others caught the eye. The face that should have been gentle was now filled with determination. Smooth black medium-length hair, stained with dark red blood. Compared to his time at the Shino Academy, Sojin Kachiki's demeanor had undergone a drastic change. He held his blade in his right hand, Kido light surging in his left, as he vigilantly watched every movement on the battlefield. However, even so, an unexpected event occurred. Young Lord Sojin. A startled cry came from behind. Sojin whirled around, instinctively swinging his Zanpakuto towards the back, but it sliced through empty air. A ferocious face appeared in his line of sight. Slash! With the sound of flesh tearing, a stabbing pain came from his chest. Sojin looked down in shock, only to find that a blade had evaded his attack and pierced straight into his heart. Whoosh! In that instant, a burst of Ryatsu erupted, a massive pillar of dazzling light shooting straight into the sky, illuminating the heavens. The entire battlefield seemed to pause, countless gazes turning towards the direction of the light pillar. Within that intense light, a deep darkness, like viscous blood, gradually flowed out. The darkness slowly coalesced into a vague, distorted right arm, standing tall on the battlefield. Heaviness, fear, pain. The ink-black color sketched and painted across the sky until darkness covered everything. Silence became the dominant tone of the battlefield. In the next moment, an indifferent single eye slowly opened on the back of the hand. The chaotic battlefield fell silent. Terrified gazes fixed on the ink-black arm standing at its center. A situation beyond comprehension. No one knew exactly what had happened, not even Sojin. He stared in bewilderment at the figure that stood like a deity, countless tiny shadows writhing across its profound form, resembling undulating black snakes. Branch-like extensions greedily absorbed the chaotically layered Ryatsu in the air, crawling incessantly between charred and blood-soaked areas, reflecting the fearful faces of the Shinigami present. Stay calm. A furious roar from the rebel army broke the deathly silence. It's just an illusion, nothing to fear. I, Katsuya Morishita, will shatter it. Crush him, Kaijamaru. The rebel leader placed his Zanpakuto horizontally before him. As his Ryatsu exploded, a surge of white light erupted. Immediately after, countless black thorny vines shot out from the sword's hilt, enveloping the shadowy right arm at the battlefield's center. Katsuya's face twisted into a vicious grin, his arrogant voice echoing across the battlefield. This is the end, monster. No one can escape Kaijamaru's binding, not even a captain. Now be a good boy and die. As he spoke, his Ryatsu erupted. The black vines glowed with an unusual light, their countless thorns growing and contracting frantically, attempting to shred the shadowy right hand completely. Witnessing this, the rebel army once again mustered their courage. Excited expressions appeared on their blood-stained faces, their jeering voices rising in unison. That's right, just like that. As expected of Lord Katsuya, unstoppable. Kill this guy, the final victory belongs to us. Hearing these taunts, Sojin felt a twinge of panic. By now, he had recognized what the right hand standing at the battlefield's center truly was. Some time ago, he had spent 1,000 Laotian kips at the Shin'o Academy to buy a protective talisman. The pattern on it was identical to that enormous shadowy right hand. To be honest, this talisman being able to block one fatal blow for him was already great value. So, even if the shadowy right hand were to be shredded directly, he wouldn't be disappointed in the least. But the scene that followed once again redefined his understanding of value for money. Author's note: the idiom value for money suggests that financial resources can be used to gain advantages, sway decisions, or achieve certain outcomes. A teeth-grinding cracking sound emanated from the shadow. Thorns snapped one after another, signaling a shift in the battle's momentum. The tree branch-like shadows latched onto the Shinigami, absorbing the chaotic Ryatsu in the air and instantly shattering their defenses. Suddenly, a surge of mist exploded like a tidal wave, freezing everything on the battlefield. The Shinigami's expressions and movements petrified as if someone had pressed a pause button. Bang! 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 Bursting sounds erupted from the bodies of the Shinigami entwined by the shadows, as if something was shattering within them. There was no gush of blood, no piercing screams. As the mist dissipated, 37 of them had become withered skeletons. The Shinigami on the Kachiki side, witnessing this hellish scene, fell into a stunned daze. Everything had happened so swiftly that before they could comprehend the situation, the tide of battle had turned completely. Seeing this, the remaining rebels shuddered and, without any unified command, fled in panic. Even their leader Katsuya, with the power of a high-ranking seated officer, lay dead. Why should they stay to share his fate? Watching the rebels scatter, the Shinigami on the Kachiki side called out to each other and eagerly began the pursuit. Sojin, however, stood rooted to the spot, still reeling from the shock of what had transpired. Soon, he alone remained on the vast battlefield. He walked to where the shadowy right hand had stood, finding only some pure black dust in the grass. He removed the now completely shattered protective talisman from his neck and muttered in disbelief. This goes beyond value for money. 1,000 Laotian kips deciding the course of a battle? There's no better deal than this. At the Shin'o Academy in the Kaido Healing Arts classroom, a student stood nervously at the front of the podium. His hands glowed with a pale green light as he stared at the white mouse before him. As he injected Ryatsu, the deep, bone-visible wound on the mouse's back healed rapidly. Countless flesh buds sprouted, expelling stagnant blood and weaving new flesh. Kaido's essence was remarkably similar to the medical ninjutsu from the neighboring village, using Ryatsu to stimulate cells and heal wounds. A perfect demonstration. The Kaido teacher nodded with satisfaction after examining the mouse's back. Everyone, follow the process you've just witnessed. Inflict wounds of varying degrees on the white mice. Then use the Kaido techniques I've taught you to treat them. Remember, the more severe the injury, the more challenging and higher scoring the healing. You may begin now. I'll be monitoring your technique and form throughout. Below the podium, Akira stroked his chin thoughtfully before turning to Aizen beside him. Sosuke, I'm not great at this Kaido stuff. Any tips to improve healing efficiency? Though others saw Aizen as unremarkable, average talent, middle of the class ranking, he recognized his genius. His ability to easily achieve full marks in cultural courses was telling. No, Aizen shook his head. Kaido is essentially about fine control of one's own Ryatsu. It requires diligent practice. There are no shortcuts. Akira sighed helplessly and turned his attention to the white mouse on the table. He picked up its slender neck with his left hand and held a scalpel in his right, pondering where to make an incision. Suddenly, a strange palpitation arose in his heart. He instinctively shuddered and, with a crack, snapped the mouse's neck. Aizen shook his head and sighed. Even in the safest Kaido class, this guy could still cause trouble. The teacher's brows furrowed as he noticed his action, quickly taking 3 steps towards him. Seeing this, Akira hurriedly placed the mouse back on the table, making a last-ditch effort. The emerald glow of Kaido burst forth, enveloping the lifeless corpse. Miraculous healing activated. In the next moment, under the teacher's astonished gaze, the broken neck realigned, and the white mouse regained its vitality. At this moment, the dead had been resurrected. The Kaido teacher's face contorted with disbelief as the little white mouse leapt off the table and scurried away from the scene. He watched the mouse escape, then turned with a stiff expression to face the innocent-looking Akira. It died. Akira nodded. And came back to life? He nodded again. The teacher stood frozen, unable to accept this reality that shattered his worldview. The other academy students looked on in confusion at the two engaged in this bizarre dialogue. Focused on practicing their own Kaido techniques, they had no idea what had just transpired. Meanwhile, Aizen, who stood next to Akira, lowered his gaze, a strange light flickering in his eyes. Although he wasn't particularly interested in Kaido, his exceptional talent allowed him to easily outperform the other students and even the teacher, despite his half-hearted attitude towards learning. Death and rebirth. The essence of Kaido is to stimulate cells to achieve a healing effect. The stronger the individual, the more difficult they are to treat. By the same logic, 4 test subjects like these white mice, extremely weak creatures. A Shinigami with powerful Ryatsu and profound Kaido skills could indeed bring them back to life at the moment of death. But Akira fit neither of these crucial criteria. Could it be a Kaido genius seen only once in a century? Pondering this, the corners of Aizen's mouth turned up slightly. The more he interacted with this priest, the more he sensed countless secrets hidden within him. It was like a fog so thick you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. You never knew what scene would appear before you in the mist the next moment. You are a well of surprises, Akira. Damn it. How can such an absurd thing exist? The teacher's eyes were bloodshot as he snatched Aizen's white mouse and slammed it down in front of Akira. Kisaragi, demonstrate again. Akira blinked, his fingers flexing as he effortlessly snapped the white mouse's neck. His right hand then glowed with Kaido light, enveloping the rigid body, because his Ryatsu had reached the level of a seated officer. Even continuous use of Kaido wouldn't cause him any strain. The teacher held his breath, eyes wide, unwilling to miss even the slightest detail. Ryatsu flow, deviation errors. Standardized movements morphed. 3 fingers became too far away. A perfectly good basic Kaido technique had been turned into something unrecognizable by Akira. Yet even so, the white mouse with its broken neck and lost signs of life came back to life after 3 seconds. Could it be that his Kaido is the true standard? Impossible. Unable to believe the reality before his eyes, the teacher turned and gathered all the white mice from the other students. His voice roared through the classroom. Again, crack, crack, crack. The endless sound of breaking bones, as if composing a macabre symphony, numbed the students while forcing the Kaido teacher to face reality. It was confirmed. This kid hadn't simply memorized the details and essentials of basic Kaido. From start to finish, no mistake was repeated. He'd perfected it. Just when you thought you'd seen the limit of his abilities, he'd always come up with something new. Dozens of white mice repeatedly danced on the edge of death. From initial clumsiness to later proficiency, and finally to ease and comfort, Akira's skill progressed. Watching him perform Kaido actually gave people the illusion that they could do it too. When the teacher tried to put this illusion into practice, the white mouse stopped breathing forever, without a hint of life remaining. I suddenly have something to do," he mumbled, his whole being plunged into gloom. Cradling the dead white mouse, he staggered out of the classroom. Today's Kaido lesson will end here. Watching the retreating figure in the corridor, the students turned their heads in unison to look at Akira. For a moment, they gazed at him with awe, as if beholding a divine being. That night, in the temporary male dormitory, the 2 young men sat upright, facing each other like scientists, secretly exploring the anomalous Kaido performance. Akira knew very well that this was the effect of his exclusive trait, miraculous healing. Yet its true essence remained a curiosity. How did it work? What kind of energy did it use? How did the miracle simply happen? Understanding his own cheat could also be the path to becoming stronger. If he could learn to bend the rules of the world to his advantage as his trait did, he could apply it to various other areas, such as Heido or Bakudo. This would allow him to boost effectiveness even without the corresponding traits. However, even as the 2 experimented on themselves, personally experiencing the wonder of Kaido, they still couldn't uncover the true reason behind it. In the end, Aizen could only attribute it to differences in individual talent. In this world, there would always be some strange geniuses, like him, like Akira, like Unohana of the 4th Division. 4th Division Barracks. Captain's office. "Captain, that's the situation." Kawai, responsible for teaching Kaido, reported to his superior with a bitter expression. "Resurrection of the dead. It's impossible no matter how you think about it. But that kid actually did it. And with such a non-standard basic Kaido technique at that. After listening to his narrative and complaints, a strong interest flickered in Unohana's eyes. Her impression of Akira was still that of someone determined yet lecherous. Oh, and one more thing, extremely poor. The treatment fee from last time was still on credit. Who would have thought that this brat would possess such talent in Kaido? Well then, 10th seat kawaii. Unohana said softly, I'll take the next Kaido class. Hearing this, his face immediately showed difficulty. But, before he could finish speaking, an intensely cold, bone-deep killing intent suddenly enveloped him. The temperature in the room seemed to plummet below freezing in an instant. Kawaii shivered, his teeth chattering as he looked with fear at the captain who wore a gentle smile. Do you have any other opinions? Unohana asked softly, still smiling. His head immediately shook like a rattled drum, not daring to have even the slightest other opinion. At this moment, he deeply realized how terrifying the captain was. No wonder few people dared to cause trouble in the 4th division. In all likelihood, those who did were probably killed by her. The next morning, in the temporary dormitory, I came specifically to thank you this time. Akira got out of bed, frowning as he looked up and down at the suddenly appearing black-haired youth. This isn't right. How come there's not even a trace? While Sojin's visit didn't surprise him, the man himself did. In Akira's experience, anyone who used a genuine Sakahon Shrine talisman would retain at least some trace of the one-eyed great god's Ryatsu. Yet Sojin showed no hint of it. He appeared unchanged, perhaps even weaker than a typical Shinigami. Uncomfortable under his scrutiny, Sojin smiled awkwardly and hastily stated the second purpose of his visit. Actually, I wanted to ask if you have any more of those talismans from last time? Akira's eyes lit up instantly, a grin spreading across his face. Those talismans require a lot of my time, effort, and energy. Before Sojin could react to this statement, Akira's voice rang out, decisive and clear. It's gonna cost extra. Money is not an issue. Upon hearing these words, Sojin suddenly felt relieved. He had expected the other party to make outrageous demands, like obtaining noble privileges, entering the highest echelons of Soul Society, or becoming an officer in the Godi I-13. Unexpectedly, it was just a matter of money. Akira looked at this serene Pigaba, man, who seemed to have money to burn and didn't care about it at all. He faintly heard the arrogant words, "Sorry, money can buy anything." For such an insufferable rich person, he must be fleeced mercilessly. 10,000 Laotian kips, no, 100,000 Laotian kips. Akira opened his mouth wide like a lion, instantly multiplying the previous price by 100. All right, Sojin nodded in agreement. But you must guarantee that the talismans are exactly the same as before. Also, after-sales service needs to be provided. Seeing how readily the other party agreed, Akira suddenly doubted if he had asked for too little. However, after a moment's hesitation, he didn't go back on his word. It's not every day you come across such a sucker. If he let this one get away, he'd be the one losing out. No problem. He thumped his chest loudly. For after-sales service, just come to me or go to the local shrine in the 76th district of East Rukongai, Sakahon. As for the talismans, there are only 10 left in stock. How many would you like, young Master Moan? Oh, I mean young Master Kachiki. Sojin looked suspiciously at the youth before him, feeling that this guy seemed to have wanted to say something very offensive just now. I'll take them all, he pondered. As for the money, I'll have my butler bring it this afternoon. Akira nodded, then flipped onto the bed. Under the astonished gazes of Sojin and Aizen, he pulled out 10 talismans from under the mattress, inside the pillowcase, from a corner of the blanket, inside his shoes, and even from Aizen's bed. Looking at his overturned mattress, Aizen's eye twitched, suddenly feeling the urge to draw his sword. Despite his vigilance and superior strength compared to Akira, he hadn't noticed the talismans hidden in his own bed. This guy is really something else. As Sojin took the crumpled talismans, considering these hiding spots, he briefly contemplated returning them. Hold on, one more question. Akira raised his right hand, index finger pointing skyward. How was the previous talisman used up? Sojin paused, pondered for a moment, then smiled. It's not really a secret. You're aware I'm the Kachiki family heir, right? Akira nodded, his curiosity piqued. Soul Society isn't as peaceful as it seems on the surface. In its dark, neglected corners, countless conflicts and wars rage on. Sojin's expression grew serious. To gain power, both noble factions and rebel groups outside the nobility wage ruthless wars, disregarding casualties. Beyond the Godai's Shinigami, many powerful unaffiliated beings in Soul Society serve these shadow factions. To quickly boost my strength and lighten my father's burdens, I recently entered a rebel battlefield. Just as an enemy ambush nearly pierced my heart, the talisman activated. Its pattern appeared at the battlefield's center, releasing a sea of mist that instantly killed 37 rebel Shinigami, including one as strong as a high-ranking seated officer. Akira stroked his chin, deep in thought. No one knew the talisman's limits better than he did. Protecting the wearer from illness and disaster might be achievable, but killing 37 Shinigami, including a seated officer? That seemed impossible. Unless, can you describe what the dead looked like? He suddenly asked. Sojin was taken aback, then frowned as he recalled, scarred face, average build. No, I don't mean their appearance. What did the corpses look like after death? Akira interrupted. After death, Sojin paused, mummies. It was as if some force had drained the blood and Ryatsu from their bodies. Hearing this, Akira finally understood what had happened. The talisman itself didn't possess such powerful abilities, but that didn't mean the one-eyed god lacked them. When it appeared on the battlefield, the cruel and bloody environment became a natural sacrificial ground. The dead became offerings, dedicating everything to Mimahagi. This is really... He shook his head in amazement, a path I never imagined. Is there a problem? Sojin asked, puzzled. Not at all. Akira said decisively. There's no one more suitable for these 10 talismans than you. However, I need to clarify one point. The talismans will show different effects when triggered in different environments. Use them with caution, young man. Sojin left, confused. Despite his repeated questions, Akira didn't reveal the true meaning of his last words, only instructing him to keep one talisman for himself. Sosuke, I truly am a business genius. After seeing off the rich fool, Akira snapped his fingers proudly and boasted. Let's go. Our target is the Academy cafeteria. Today it's my treat. Aizen shook his head helplessly. Some people really couldn't hide their emotions. Joy, anger, sorrow, and happiness were all written on his face. But this kind of person seems quite suitable to be a friend. After breakfast, Akira and Aizen arrived at the classroom together. The first class of the day was Kaido again. Akira assumed that after a night's rest, Kawai, the teacher, would have adjusted his mindset. After all, he was an elite Shinigami, a high-ranking seated officer of the 4th Division. Placing his textbooks on the desk, he began idly looking around, waiting for the teacher's arrival. Despite his innate talent in this branch of Kido, thanks to his exclusive trait miraculous healing, he still needed to learn Kaido to fully harness this ability. However, long after the bell had rung, there was still no sign of the teacher. Just as he was wondering if Kawai hadn't recovered from yesterday's shock, a familiar yet strange figure slowly walked past the window in the corridor. Akira rubbed his eyes in disbelief. When he recognized the person, his eyes widened, and he involuntarily drew in a sharp breath, muttering to himself in astonishment. Could it be? Has the 4th Division's finances become so tight that they've come to the Academy to collect debts? As the figure slowly ascended to the podium, the Academy students stood dumbfounded, scarcely believing their eyes. A pristine white captain's Haori, 2 braids framing her face, and a beautiful, delicate visage with a gentle, approachable smile. Her overall aura radiated the warmth of a spring sun. See Captain Unohana? Someone exclaimed, instantly recognizing her. As the captain of the 4th Division, Retsu Unohana had healed countless Shinigami. Her gentle smile had been repeatedly voted the most comforting in the Seriidii Communication magazine. Though the 4th Division wasn't the top choice for most Academy students, it didn't diminish their admiration for her. As the object of their reverence appeared before them, the group could barely contain their excitement. In contrast, Akira buried his face behind an open book, attempting to hide from Unohana's searching gaze. His intuition screamed that this 4th Division captain was here for him. He couldn't fathom why his intuition felt so accurate this time, but he sensed her dangerous gaze had already found him. Good morning, everyone. Unohana's gentle voice resonated through the classroom, cutting through the students' awed silence. As she spoke, a hush fell over the room. I am Retsu Unohana, captain of the 4th Division of the Godai 13. Your Kaido instructor, Kawai-san, is unwell. As I have some free time, I've come to give you a substitute lesson. Please don't worry. Although it's been years since I last taught, I still have some expertise in Kaido. It won't hinder your learning progress." After these words, the classroom remained silent. The students exchanged bewildered glances, at a loss for words. For the captain of the 4th Division to claim some expertise in Kaido was laughable. Throughout Seoul society, who would dare assert their healing skills surpassed this brilliant woman? Seeing that the students had no objections, Unohana smiled and nodded, continuing. "I heard that a Kaido genius appeared in yesterday's class. Is he here today?" As soon as the words fell, Akira's heart skipped a beat. He cast a pleading look at Aizen beside him from behind his book. Their eyes met, and he could clearly read the message. "I can't help you. Sosuke, you traitor. How dare you abandon me in my hour of need?" Countless gazes fell precisely on Akira. The students were all too familiar with this class celebrity. Directly confronting the young lady of the Shohoin family, dispatching the homeroom teacher Yuroi with a single strike, overwhelming the elite 6th-year student Takeo with one Hakuda technique. Consecrations, exorcisms, blessings, mansion relocations, groundbreaking ceremonies. He'd even managed to get all the male students of the Shino Academy to live in temporary dormitories woven by the 12th Division. Although he hadn't been enrolled for long, the name Akira Kisaragi was already deeply etched in their minds. Impossible to forget. In the 2,000-year history of the Shino Academy, the last person as explosive as him now served as the captain of the 8th Division. Of course, that person's explosive nature was limited to his lecherous behavior. Compared to Akira's exaggerated performance, it would be hard to find another like him even in 2 millennia. When countless gazes focused on him, Akira knew he couldn't escape. He could only let out a sigh of despair as he lowered the book covering his face, his expression long. "Does Captain Unohana have any instructions?" Unohana's gaze fell upon him, once again examining the young man with keen interest. Although she couldn't fully gauge his abilities, Kawaii's recommendation was enough to pique her curiosity. If he truly possessed once-in-a-century Kaido talent, recruiting him for the 4th Division could prove invaluable. With proper guidance, he might even become her successor as captain. "For today's lesson, I need a student's assistance," she said softly. "Don't worry, there's no danger involved." Hearing this, Akira breathed a sigh of relief. He was glad she wasn't here to collect a debt. Having spent all his savings at breakfast, he was relying on a large sum due this afternoon. At the moment, he was flat broke. "Oh, just that. You should have said so earlier." Akira relaxed, casually strolling to the podium to stand beside her. Seeing him in position, Unohana smiled and nodded before beginning the lesson. "I understand you've all mastered the basics of Kaido and even attempted healing on white mice. Today, we'll focus on understanding the human body and how basic Kaido manifests in individuals with varying levels of Ryatsu. Mastering this is crucial for passing the Kaido course." As Akira listened, an ominous feeling crept into his heart. Unohana's gentle gaze settled on him. "Kisaragi-kun, please place your left hand on the experiment table." Despite her incredibly friendly smile, the moment their eyes met, Akira felt as if every pore on his body had suddenly opened, with a bone-chilling cold rushing in. His danger instinct blared a sharp warning. It was as if disobeying her request would lead to a fate worse than death. Slap! Without hesitation, Akira placed his left hand on the experiment table. Unohana smiled approvingly, then, to the shock of onlookers, extended her pristine right hand and gently covered the back of his hand. "Hold on. Something seems off about this situation." Akira felt the smoothness on the back of his hand, and a faint fragrance filled his nostrils, giving him a surreal sensation. But reality quickly kicked the door. When Unohana lifted her right hand, the smooth sensation was replaced by searing pain. Blood flowed, flesh tore, and a ghastly wound appeared on the back of his hand. Please observe the movement essentials and the release of Ryatsu. For such a minor injury, basic Kaido can easily achieve complete healing. As she explained calmly, her right hand emitted an emerald-green Kaido light, enveloping Akira's left hand. The wound healed rapidly before their eyes, even the bloodstains vanishing completely. The crowd erupted in awe, marveling at her profound healing skills. Even with just basic Kaido, she demonstrated effects akin to reviving the dead and mending bones. "These are the finer points," Unohana said gently. "When attempting Kaido on the human body, the main challenge is overcoming psychological barriers. Now, Kisaragi-kun will demonstrate for everyone once more." As she spoke, to everyone's bewilderment, she picked up the scalpel on the experiment table and swiftly left a ghastly wound on the back of her own hand. Snow-white skin and flesh tore open, blood flowing incessantly. The familiar gentle smile appeared before his eyes as she softly said, "I'm counting on you, Kisaragi-kun."
And that concludes this episode. If you enjoyed it, I'd seriously love it if you guys could leave a like on the video, as it genuinely helps out so much, and it keeps me going, plus it takes only 1 second. That said, have a wonderful day. See you in the next one.